day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a man identifying himself as Dan Cooper bought a plane ticket from Portland to Seattle. He hijacked the plane, claiming he had a bomb in his briefcase, and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. He jumped out of the plane with the money and the bomb somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, never to be seen again. The FBI claims to have investigated over 1,000 people, including dozens of deathbed confessions. In 2016, 45 years after the hijacking, the FBI suspended its investigation of the case. While the FBI is no longer looking for DB Cooper, there is a community of people who are trying to solve the case on their own. Welcome to the Cooper Vortex. Thank you for joining us for part 3 of the Vortex Book Club. I'd recommend starting with part 1, but just like all episodes of the show, they stand alone pretty well. The Nuclear Nerd is back, and we've read 2 more books. Please enjoy part 3 of our book review series with my good friend, Nicole Legg. All right, Nicole, we made it through 2 more books.
We have.
Norjack, The Investigation of D.B. Cooper by Ralph Himmelsbach and Thomas K. Worcester?
I would say Worcester, right?
All right, I like it. Let's go with that. And we also did Finding D.B. Cooper, Chasing the Last Lead in America's Only Unsolved Skyjacking by Martin Andrade, Jr. and Sr.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's start with Norjack.
Okay.
The mustache deserves to go first.
Had you read Norjack before?
I have read Norjack before.
Okay. I had not. This was my first time.
It had been quite a while. I think one of the most interesting things about rereading it is one thing that bugged me, and it was also brought up in Marty's book, is that it switches from first person to third person all the time. There is a Himmelsbach story where it's, I did this, I did that, I put the light on top of my car, I talked to this person. And then in the next paragraph, it's not even the next chapter. Mm-hmm. The next paragraph is, then a note was given to Special Agent Ralph Himmelsbach. Like, aren't I reading his book?
I felt like, so when it started, I almost felt like I was watching Dragnet. So I think that's the mind frame I was in when I was reading it. So I kind of thought as, he's telling the story and then I get this narrative in the background. So that's kind of how I followed with it. But it did, it opened up with him, sitting, eating lunch and then, getting called to the airport or, going to the airport.
Yeah, and it's very descriptive, even going to the airport. And like I said, I put the light on my car. I took Sandy Boulevard, but Sandy has traffic at 3:00. So then I took 82nd. Yeah, and I know all those roads so well, so I could picture exactly where he's going. And oh yeah, I wouldn't take Sandy either at this time of day. But interesting detail to add. I mean, the book really is Ralph's investigation. It isn't the investigation of D.B. Cooper. This is Ralph's memoir. This is Ralph's investigation of the D.B. Cooper case.
Yeah, which it's his take on it. So everything with a grain of salt. But it was interesting, I guess, to learn a little bit about the ground side of it, kind of what was happening on the ground real time with, a little twist, a little Himmelsbach twist to it. But I did enjoy I think it was in chapter 2 where they say, Ralph, I guess this case will be assigned to you, don't you? I was like, okay, well, this started early. But he talks about Seanie.
He does. And even where he's like, I knew right away that other people were going to try to copy this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which was, I then read up on Seanie, which it's quite a sad story.
Yeah.
That one article about him, it's really sad, which I think all of these are kind of sad.
Yeah, none of the copycats have a super awesome story to it, which it makes you wonder. We've done that with D.B. Cooper so much. Is reality much more depressing than he's this Billy Badass character, gentleman James Bond type?
Yeah, we're giving him too much credit. Too much.
Well, Ralph would definitely say that.
Yes, he definitely made that known. And I think reading this book kind of drove it home, maybe in a different light, because I think I kind of thought, when he would say he was a dirty, rotten scoundrel, I kind of would just kind of laugh a little bit about it and think about the drama of it all. But then reading through it, I realized his take on it. Like he was just tired from how I felt. He was tired of everyone making a big deal out of him, making him a hero. And so he was just kind of like, stop, like this guy's a crook. Like stop making him your hero, your, you know, knight in shining armor kind of thing, stuck it to the man.
Oh, absolutely.
So I liked reading that.
I could make fun of Ralph for being like a square, or even like he seems from a different time. Very much so. But that is who I want to be an FBI agent. I want that guy that is a super square, that always stands perfectly upright, that does everything correct, who has a lot of pride in his job, in his performance, in the way just he carries himself. And
Yeah,
Ralph was very much like the stereotypical ideal of an FBI agent.
absolutely. He had connections everywhere. He was up in a helicopter. He knew this person. He was calling them. They were getting him in the helicopter. So I thought, I did like hearing his side of the story with his embellishments, but still, I thought it was fun to read. I enjoyed it, but like I kind of looked at it as like a dragnet. I was just reading a dragnet episode, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it has that same cadence
Mm-hmm.
to it, where you want to read it in like a 1920s old-timey voice.
Exactly.
And Ralph has a very high opinion of FBI agents and pilots, and seemingly no one else.
We just don't understand.
We don't understand.
Don't understand.
I even liked some of the Ted Mayfield talk,
Hmm?
because he talks about Mayfield calling him, which I've always thought is kind of weird, but if you've got this expertise and maybe you want to be involved, or something. But I also liked when Ralph was like, I had a run-in with Mayfield once at his airport because some of his skydiving pilots weren't following the rules of the airstrip.
Yes.
It's like, even outside of work, he needs to tell people to follow the rules.
Yes, he is still FBI to the core. But and he likes to throw out the 7 degrees below zero. He said that a couple of times in the book about Cooper jumping at 7 degrees below zero.
Right. And often fails to mention that Celsius,
Yes. I
which
think
as
was
an
it,
American is quite misleading.
I think he mentions it in the beginning.
I think
And then
you're
the
right.
rest of the
Yeah.
book, he just leaves that off and he just says -7.
Yes, I think
So
you're right about that.
yeah. But you're right. Like I would specify every single time or just use Fahrenheit. Like
Right. The book is by an American for a mostly American audience. Let's use freedom units, all right?
yes. Right. But yeah, I mean, I think you. Oh, I do have a question. When they did ground searches, did they use dogs as well?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure there were probably like a cadaver dog or two
Mm-hmm.
that they had running through the woods, but I don't think there was any like, we're gonna have a bloodhound smell his tie and
Right.
see if we could find something with that, which would have been kind of interesting. Even 40 hours later, a bloodhound could
Mm-hmm.
still pick that up, but
Yeah.
they'd have to come across his trail.
Yeah. And they were looking in the wrong spot. So I don't know enough about search dogs to know what they're capable of or not capable of. But I was just curious if they also used search dogs in that and if they used the tie with the search dogs.
I don't think there's any evidence of that,
Hmm.
but it seems like something they should have done.
Right. You know,
But I guess if you don't know where his trail even is, then
no. And what it was, how long later? 2 days, basically?
yeah, I don't think they had anyone looking in that area for like 40 hours.
Yeah. And it was raining. Does that make a difference?
I don't think it makes too much of a difference for the dog,
Okay.
but I'm not an expert on it. What I know about those type of dogs, I've learned from Mythbusters and from Mark Rober.
Oh, I love Mythbusters. I haven't seen that in forever, but I loved Mythbusters. That was a fun show.
Oh,
I
it's
liked
one of the
that.
best shows of all time.
Guy with the glasses and the hat. He was my favorite.
Jamie Heineman.
Yes. He was my favorite. But he talked about, once again, FBI went into the sky marshals, the history of them and the metal detectors. So, I mean, I think his book covered a lot. He even talked about Martin McNally in the book.
He does mention McNally in the book.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some weird stuff in there that it seems like he should have known because he had access to the FBI files and talked to, people that were directly involved. One thing that stuck out to me early was that he said he kept checking his watch.
I did. I made a note of that. And did Himmelsbach look at the files? Do we know if he actually looked at the files or did he just do his own detective work?
I don't know the answer to that because neither would surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if there was a Portland set of FBI files that was just Ralph Himmelsbach.
Right, because he had, what was the name of the guy that kept all of his notes for him?
I don't think I wrote that down.
Norm Belfry was the lead card agent.
Oh, okay.
So he's the one that actually kept all the notes for Himmelsbach. So it makes me wonder if he actually read the files, what they had, or if he just went on his own investigation.
And he presents himself as the lead case agent. So
he does.
Is that I am the lead case agent in Portland?
Mm-hmm.
When Portland doesn't have a DB Cooper investigation? Because even like the Reno office would have something.
Yeah.
Or is he just, because he's in Portland, the FBI in Seattle is like, hey, Ralph, go talk to Johnny Smith at this address in Portland and see what he has to say.
That's true. And then he just kind of found himself calling himself that case agent because he did say that he was the go-to for skyjackings.
Yes.
So you have a point. Maybe that's how he kind of slid into the Portland case agent for the DB Cooper case.
Well, and I'm sure even the book sort of makes it clear, like the investigation's not going anywhere. It's going nowhere. And is that just anyone who wants to work on it at that point in time? And then he becomes this figurehead of the case. So if I'm the lead case agent in Seattle and I don't want to deal with all the crazy DB Cooper people, Ralph made himself this figurehead. You can go talk to him.
And they did seem to talk to him because he did go into all of that. Not to skip to the end, but that last paragraph, it reminded me very much of Skyjack when Joe calls and he's like, what's the recipe? But the woman who called and like her mother had a safety deposit box full of money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did we ever find out who that was? No, it's too early to be Joe.
Yeah, it's too early.
Yeah.
And like when I think safety deposit box, my mind goes right to Gossett.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So I wonder if that's connected to Gossett because she did think it was her brother and he had a leg injury in a parachute jump.
I don't know if that's Gossett. It could just be some random tip that never went anywhere.
Yeah. But it did have me thinking if anyone knew who that was and if whatever came from it, if it was one of our original kind of people that they investigated or not, or if they just kind of left it. It was nothing.
I wish there was, like some of the other books did a hardcover and then the paperback comes out a year later and then there's like a one extra chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I wish there was like a 2007 update to this book. That's like, okay, I wrote this book in 86. Is that what we said it was? And now I want to tell you about everything that happened from 86 to 2006.
Yeah, that would be nice because I would like to know his take on a couple of things that have happened since then to see if that changes his mind about anything.
Well, he talked to Jeffrey Gray for quite a bit. Joe Weber had a lot of communication with him.
Right.
The Max Gunther thing.
Because
there's really no talk of Gunther in this book, is there?
He goes through all of he talks about McCoy, Hahnemann,
and the Carl Fleming thing he talks about. And I don't
Felt
remember
grit.
any Gunther stuff.
No, because then he goes into like the different searches. The submarine guy.
I did like reading all that stuff.
It was a little nerve-wracking. I can't imagine going in that kind of water in a submarine with all of those trees and just risking getting caught down there. I don't know how deep Lake Merwin is though.
I want to say it's like 200 feet or
Okay,
something
so
like that.
decent.
Don't
Yeah.
quote me on that, but yeah, it's pretty good sized
Yeah.
because they just plugged up a canyon wall
Oh.
and created the lake that way.
And so whatever falls into the lake just kind of decays into the lake,
Well, there
like
would
the
have been
trees
like
and stuff.
a road there before they built the dam and everything.
Oh.
There's a town, I think it's the town of Rife
Mhm.
Lake in Washington. That was a town, and then they built a dam, and the whole town is now underwater. And when I was probably 14 or 15, it was an unseasonably dry year in Washington, and so it got almost completely drained. And my dad took me and my sister, and on the part that had been drained, there was still like a bridge that was built. There were foundations for structures that were just underwater forever.
That had to have been creepy, but cool.
It was creepy and cool, yes.
That would have been a lot of fun because we live on a reservoir. Um, but you have to be so careful because all of the trees they just fall in and they just leave them. So you have to be careful not to get caught up on them either in your boat or just kind of moving around the water. So I guess that Lake Merwin's very similar to that. Then if you're trying to take a submersive in there.
Yeah, they'll pull the trees that fall down out of the water because they've got, I think they do on this dam, but a lot of the dams in the Pacific Northwest have like, it looks like an excavator that's on the top of the dam, but it actually just swings over to pick up logs. So they'll push logs to the wall of the dam and then use this machine to pull them up out of the water.
Pull them up. Oh, that's interesting. Is the water used for anything? Just power?
Uh, yeah, power and storage.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like a drinking water reservoir or just for power.
I don't know if that's drinking water. I don't know. Now you're making me look bad because of all these damn questions I don't have the
These
answer to.
damn questions
These
about
damn
this
questions.
dam. Okay, what else? What did we learn? What else did we learn from this book?
He keeps saying that it's the worst storm of all time. It's a broiling Pacific storm, intense pouring rain, relentless. He uses all these words where you want to picture a storm.
Mhm.
And storms are fairly rare in the Pacific Northwest, but what's not rare is that it rains every day.
Rains.
And so it would have just been a normal rainy day.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything crazy. And he lived in the Pacific Northwest.
It's not like
That's
me
the
going out
yeah.
there and being like, "Oh man, it's so wet and rainy out here compared to the east."
Yeah, because if
Yeah.
you're from Kansas or Florida and someone says raining, you're picturing a storm because that's the
Mhm.
rain that you get. But
Mhm.
if you live in Portland or Seattle and someone says it's raining, you're just imagining a light drizzle.
Yeah. So, it added a little extra to his book, made it a little more exciting talking about that.
I just don't know why you have to exaggerate the weather.
Do you think it's because he just wanted to make Cooper as bad as possible? Like
Yeah,
he
but
just
if you
wanted the
exaggerate the
situation
weather
horrible.
and he lives, then you made him look better.
That's true. And he does waver. And I think in the end, he doesn't say that Cooper died. He's not dead camp.
I know that is interesting because a lot of the book is he died in the jump, and then
Mhm.
it's sort of like, well, since this never went anywhere, it seems like he could have survived.
Yeah. So no, that's true. That's a good way of looking at it. I hadn't figured. I don't know why he exaggerated the weather so much then.
And if Ralph Himmelsbach lived in Miami, I
Mhm.
would understand the exaggeration of the weather.
Right.
But he lived in Portland. So I don't accept the exaggeration on the weather from him.
Do you think that's something that the ghostwriter put in? Because he had the writer with it.
Yeah, that very well could be.
We don't
Where's
know where he
Thomas
was from.
Worcester from?
Oh, he's an Oregonian since 1959. So no.
Okay, there goes that.
Yeah. Oh well.
Another glaring mistake for me is Cooper seats in 18C.
Yes. And so every time I read seat numbers, I have to like count over and I'm like, oh wait,
Yeah,
nope, that is not
as
it.
do I. A, B, C, D, E, E. Okay.
Yeah. And you would think we would know this by now. But yes, he does have that incorrect. Well, I mean, he's got a couple things in here that don't quite match the 302s. So that does make me think he probably wasn't reading them.
Yeah, that could be. Or like again, I don't know Ralph personally, so I'm just speculating on what
Yeah.
I know of him. But he strikes me as maybe the kind of guy it's like, why would I want to read Nicole's notes? I'm doing my own
Right.
investigation.
Right. Exactly. I mean, because that's his job.
Right.
Like, and he can clearly do his job. So I do wonder if he's just taking what he gets from interviews because Seattle's doing the same thing at the same time. So maybe he just doesn't see them.
Yeah, that's a
He's
good point.
to give himself credit, give him some credit because he'd worked very hard on this. Very hard.
One thing I really did like reading though was he talked about the FBI really looked hard at missing persons,
Yes.
which I don't know why, but I've heard people say, well, they never looked at missing persons. Like, well, of course they did, but
Yeah.
you also have that thing in 1971 of if your dad left the house and never came back, your mom's not reporting him as missing. She's
No.
like, well, I guess Dave's not going to come back.
Yeah. Dave's going to go get a new family now.
Dave went to get a pack of smokes and never returned.
Yeah. So that is, who knows how many missing people are actually out there that wives probably just thought, they were a Dan LeClaire and just up and left. Or Dick Lepsy, isn't he one that just kind of up and left as well?
Yeah, but that one doesn't seem like he abandoned his family as much as maybe something happened to him.
Foul play.
Yeah, because I struggle to picture the kind of guy that's writing and reading poetry with his children
Mm,
as the guy who leaves his family. If
that's true.
the description of him was he loved sitting on the couch, drinking beer and watching football,
Mhm.
um, but never did much fatherly stuff, then I'm like, okay, yeah, that guy bounced.
Right.
But the guy that's writing poetry with his children, I
Yeah.
don't, it's tougher to see him bouncing. And
Mm,
from everything I've read, like Ross Richardson's book, Still Missing, it all of his family members were like he was a loving, caring father and husband,
oh wow.
and we didn't expect this.
Hmm. Okay.
Versus somebody like Dan LeClaire,
Right.
who had tried to disappear previously. And I
Right.
still can't get over that. I'm gonna fake my own drowning and then come back to my family.
Yeah. How do you do? I mean, how do you do that? You've gone through all of this. They've been looking for you, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, hey, sorry,"
Hey, Brenda, what's for dinner?
right?
Like, oh, you're not dead or
Right.
missing, or you just abandoned us. Nice.
There wouldn't be a lot of questions that followed that. It would just kind of smooth over. I don't know, but back then it was a different time.
A very different time. I could definitely picture abandoning my wife. I could never picture abandoning my children. I'm not saying
Yeah.
I'm doing either of those right now,
Right.
but like, sure, am I too much of a coward to just be like, hey, I'm not into this anymore. Let's split up? Yeah, maybe I'm a coward and so I'll just bounce. But the idea I'm going to disappear from my kids is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. That's a whole another level that but there are definitely men like that out there. Yeah,
Heroes, as I
don't have
like
a
to
phone.
call them.
Dirty, rotten scoundrels.
The sleazy, rotten crooks.
Right. Which was hilarious because he got that on a t-shirt when he retired.
And he even makes fun of himself for saying that in the book,
Yeah.
which I appreciate.
He got a revolver and a t-shirt, which I think is that's great. But I do think he does make a point of making sure that we are careful of who we accuse of doing things. And I thought that was really important um, to kind of say. And, all these people come to him, they've investigated all of those people, and just to kind of, check them out before we really bring them up to light.
Yeah, because there is like that page where he's talking about that, where it's like some bitter ex-girlfriend is just going to call
Mm-hmm.
in and say that her ex was DB Cooper just so he gets harassed by the FBI.
Yeah.
And he definitely does not like that.
No, no, he doesn't like that waste of time. But I did find interesting. Do you say his name Hale, Frank Hale, the helicopter pilot? He was the survival expert, and he said that Cooper did it just like he would have done it. And then and what was interesting is he said that he would have put in his pockets a wool cap, jelly beans, knives, compasses, all these things that Dan LeClaire had. So like it was kind of like, I wonder if there's a connection. But he was also on In Search of. The same guy was interviewed on
I'm
In
gonna
Search
have to
of.
watch that In Search of again. It's been a couple years since I saw that.
I cheated and watched Ryan's video. So
His
I kind of
reaction video?
yeah.
I gave him a hard time about his thumbnails for his reaction videos. I was
Oh,
like,
he
bro,
hates
you're
it.
going the YouTuber route?
He has to do that stuff. But I've loved the reaction videos. So I cheated.
I wish
I
I could
did
say I
watch
haven't
that.
watched them. I don't think I watched the In Search of. I did watch the Let Me Know,
Yeah, yeah.
and then he had one last night, 2 days ago, that I was playing while I was doing some stuff. It was a YouTuber that I'd never heard of that does like computer animation stuff.
Oh, yeah. And then because last night was Mike Davis. That
Okay,
was
so it
last night.
was 2 nights ago or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I like watching it because do you find that the more you read, the less you know? Like you
Yes.
start getting things really mixed up.
Yeah, I've brought that up on the show several times. Like, we'll start talking about something, and it's like, wait, am I thinking of that narrative from this one book? Is that where I'm getting this? And then
Mhm.
I'll get details of McCoy and Rackstraw mixed up, and then someone's like, well, you're thinking of somebody else. That's not. I'm like, okay,
Right.
you're right. You're right. I am thinking of
Yeah.
someone else. Sorry.
And then you just I just totally like go blank sometimes on certain things and be like, wait. Whereas if you had asked me like 2 weeks ago, I could have like just told you right off the bat, oh, it's blah 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 blah. But then I think after reading these, now I'm kind of like, oh, what really happened then? Was this right? Because I'm
It's a
finding myself like texting Ryan to be like, hey, what happened?
it is interesting too that we're just hammering these one after the next, and like the hijacking, reading the hijacking feels like homework.
Yeah,
It's that exact same feeling I had in high school or in college where it's like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this.
yeah, yeah. And but I think he did. I mean, what was nice about this one, it was a different take on the hijacking. It
It
was his
was.
take on the hijacking. So that was I did like that because it did break it up a little to have his perspective, a ground perspective, kind of what was happening at the airport, all of those
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. And it opens with him like getting that call and then driving to the airport and stuff like we talked about. And that's interesting. It's his take, it's his point of view. It's not somebody recounting again what happened on Flight 305, November
Yeah.
24, 1971.
Yes. Let's see. All right. What else did we learn?
Oh, I wrote page 17.
Mhm.
He pushes he doesn't push, he cuts in front of a lady to get into the door of the airport and he writes, "This is no time for chivalry."
Yes. That was right before him being told that this was going to be his case.
And it's just like that is another one of those things where he's from a different time where
Yeah.
the fact that he didn't hold the door for the lady with the hat box, he remembered well enough in 1986 that there has to be a reason why he did that.
Yeah. I hope she's reading and I
15
hope
years
she
ago, yeah,
understands.
15 years ago, I didn't hold a door open for a woman and I got to put that in here.
Yeah. Yeah. He
And you
does.
just don't hear that word used very often anymore,
No,
chivalry.
no, not at all. Well, I mean, it's a different time, a different age. Like you said, he's from a different time period where, I mean, think of all the words that we use now that aren't used then, and vice versa. There are tons
You don't
of
think
words.
Ralph Himmelsbach was saying skibbity toilet?
Probably not. He was, he was professional. He was an FBI agent. But I did enjoy, kind of his look back. He told the story about the water witching guy and with giving him his daughter's flashlight.
And that's one of those stories where like Ryan brought that up to me and I was like, I don't remember that. And then rereading the book, it's like, oh yeah, okay.
Yep.
I do remember the daughter's flashlight story. There are all these tiny little small details and stories in the vortex where it's like, isn't this story cool? But it's 2 paragraphs in a book that
Yeah.
was written 35 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Ages ago. But you're right. Like it is, the little things that you read that you're like, wait, where did I hear that from? But you've read like 10 books at that point. And
yeah,
typically you're not going to go back and read them all again.
And typically I'm not reading 6 books a month.
I know. I've hit my yearly quota. I guess I'll have to make a new goal.
I have read
books. I'll read
7
10
books this year, Nicole, and 7 of them are about DB Cooper.
Me too. That's right. We have read those 7 books. Yes. But there's only so many DB Cooper books, so we'll run out. So you'll have to come up with something else. What's going to be your other ones? What's your
We're
other
not doing
subject?
50. I have to read something else soon. I'm going to lose it. There's just too much immersion in DB Cooper at this point in time.
Yeah. I mean, there's like the suspect ones. Well, ha ha ha. That I think is going to be completely different.
Well, it definitely will be different.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've put all of my books that I usually have to the side, completely to the side at this point, so that I can get through these first, and then I'll go back to them.
My wife wanted to go to this new bookstore. It's like 30 miles away, and on Sunday, and I was like, I can't look at other books right now. Like, I can't. I have a docket of stuff I have to read, and it's at least once a month I'm at a thrift store or something. I'm like, oh, I would like to read this book.
Yeah.
And I'll just pick it up. Oh, it's $2. I got $2.
Right. Yeah. Do you find yourself looking for DB Cooper books?
I always do, and I never find any.
No, same. Every time I pass any kind of used bookstore. And I think especially I would think on the East Coast it wouldn't be as popular, but I still have yet to find one at a thrift store or at any used bookstore. What else did we not cover for this?
I wanted to mention on page 99, I took your advice and wrote page numbers next to some of my more specific notes. He said he was very active as a chanter in the shrine.
That's right. Yes.
And
I have a different page 99 note,
and that one I was like, there's no other information. I gave you all the information that he provides there. And so I had to Google that. And it's not easy to Google that.
Oh, the shrine? Yeah, no.
Yeah, and so it took me a while to figure out it's like a Masonic temple type of thing. And he would have been in essentially a choir.
Yes. In the temple. Do you guys so like I guess we don't have as many parades as we used to anymore, but like Christmas parades, we have a pretty big Shriner, like Masonic Shriner presence here. And so they're always in the parades, all different types. So you're going to have them all in the cars. You're going to have them on horses. I'd say a good 20% of our parades are the Shriners.
Really?
with their little hats on.
Yeah, because I had no idea what it was when I read it.
Well, obviously, it's not an East Coast thing because he was there on the West Coast, but I know here it's a pretty big presence.
Yeah, if he would have said, "Oh, I'm heavily involved at the Masonic Lodge,"
Hmm.
I would have been okay, moving on. But no, I'm really involved as a chanter at the shrine. I had
Yeah.
no idea what that meant.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure the Shriners and the Shrine, they're all kind of the same thing. I could be wrong, but there it's a pretty big group of them in the city. And they're always out.
What was your page 99 note?
Oh, we talked about it. It was the making sure we just protect people's reputations
Oh, okay.
and making sure that people aren't trying to just be mean and throw people out there. He covered a lot on 99 then, right? He went straight.
Yeah. The only other note I have that we didn't talk about is Ted Mayfield told Himmelsbach that he would not do that jump under any circumstances.
Not even naked, right? Was that Mayfield that said that, or was that someone else that said that?
I think that was Mayfield. But
Without boots.
right.
Yeah.
But that's just so weird because every other parachutist I've ever talked to was, "Oh yeah, I could do that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you think he was saying that just because he didn't want to be involved or thought that it was him? Because they looked at him, but he had the alibi because he had already called in.
Well, isn't Ted Mayfield also like 5'6"?
I think so.
Like unusually short, like my height. Like right away, if I was the hijacker, right away they would call out he was short. He was a short guy.
I wouldn't call that, but yeah. I mean, they're saying, Ted Braden's 5'8". That's not, you know, incredibly tall either for a man, but we're thinking maybe he's taller. In an airplane, everyone looks different in an airplane.
Yeah, and Ted Braden probably has confidence that makes him an inch taller.
Right. He just stands a little bit taller. But yeah, that's true. I did forget that Ted Mayfield was 5'6". There's a picture of him going around.
Isn't Ted Mayfield the one that died because his arm got cut off by a propeller?
I think so.
I think that is
He
Mayfield.
just like bled out. I think that's a pretty horrible way to go.
Yeah, that'd be a drag.
Yeah.
Having
Yeah.
your arm cut off by a propeller is a huge bummer.
Yeah. Brad's so Brad's airplanes. So he before he worked on the Raptor, he worked on the Hawkeye, the E2C Hawkeye, which is a propeller plane. And so they always had tons when I would go on base and see him, there was always tons of like safety about don't walk into the propeller. Like it was everywhere. So I can't even imagine having your arm taken off by one.
Yeah, and it's
I mean,
some weird plane where you're like spinning the prop to get it going.
no. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
No. I mean, it's going to be fast. I mean, I'm pretty sure it came off pretty quick.
Oh yeah, it's gonna slice it clean off. That thing's spinning at like a trillion miles an hour.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm guessing it probably didn't take, I'm hoping it wasn't a long time that he had to lay there.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
But it'd be a bummer to watch your arm fall off.
I mean, I would say that would be a very traumatic experience, but you wouldn't really have to live with that trauma for too long.
But I think that's the only other Nordjack
Yeah.
note I got in here.
Yeah.
Oh, and page 41, Ralph believes Cooper wanted to jump right away.
Yeah, which is a big discussion that we've been having right when he wanted to jump. Mm-hmm.
I used to be a he wanted to jump right away guy, but I've changed on that a little bit.
What made you change?
Just because he could have, even lowering the aft stairs, he could have jumped sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I think his plan really was to end up sort of where he started.
It makes sense. He was already tying everything to himself while they were still on the ground, and he wanted to take off, kind of ready. So, what is it, a 30-minute flight?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. So, he had a few minutes to prepare himself and then jump. I agree with that too. I mean, he started his flight there. He had to get there somehow. That might have been close. I mean, of course, he could have flown in from anywhere, but I guess it's a 50-50 chance that he could also just driven there or live close to there or have a car somewhere around there. But I'm right there with you too. I've changed to him wanting to jump closer back to where he started.
Yeah, I think that just makes the most sense. Maybe there is some accomplice, or maybe he lived in Battleground or something like that. Knew the area well enough that he could call a friend. Hey man, I had too much to drink and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm wandering alone in the woods.
Right.
Could you pick me up?
Yeah. You know, no, I agree. I'm not opposed to an accomplice. I used to be. That was the one thing I was not 50-50 on, was an accomplice. I was like, no, he acted alone. And then Johnston came around. Was it Joseph Johnston or Thomas Johnston, the first suspect who was sitting in jail? And he had all the maps of the area. He was practicing skydiving. Um, and I mean, then I was like, well, he's a perfect accomplice. Like he's got everything that you need and he doesn't live much longer after. So no loose lips.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm at on accomplice. I think there is no accomplice because no one talked. And also, I
Mhm.
think it's really insane to do this with no accomplice. You
Right.
need somebody else. So I truly have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm for it and against it.
Yeah. Like most things. I mean, I know I laugh and I say I'm 50-50 on most things, but I am because you have to be open. Like you can't just, you don't know what's gonna come at you and you gotta be open to being like, okay, well, that actually could work. So maybe not. So that I did. I was totally a lone wolf person. Now I'm maybe an accomplice person.
Yeah, and when you do it that way, when it's one or the other, then you're like, oh, I knew it. I knew it. I've thought all along, accomplice for sure. And it
Right?
turns out I was
If
right.
you stay 50-50, right? It's like a
Yep.
weatherman. You can never be wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So would you say this is a must-read book in the Vortex?
Yeah, absolutely. He was part of the case. Like I think, well, he put himself in the case. But I think, he talked to Gunther and all the people. So yeah, I think it's got to be a must read.
It's got to be. I can't think of, there's no FBI agent that's put themselves forward more. I
Mm-mm.
mean, we all know Larry Carr now, but that's because we're in the Vortex.
Right.
If you've watched the Unsolved Mysteries and maybe you took a look at one book, Ralph Himmelsbach's name is going to be in there.
Yeah. I think it's a must read. Absolutely.
I think he cared more about this case than any of the other FBI agents.
I think so too. I mean, it kind of, I mean, he mentioned multiple times that he was not obsessed with the case, but, it did tear him away from his family a lot of times. So, it definitely, he was also maybe a victim of Cooper from, spending so much of his time on a case.
Yeah, but I tell people all the time I'm not obsessed with DB Cooper. And that's just because I'm trying to tell myself that.
Right?
Everyone I say that to knows that I'm lying. Obviously,
Yeah,
you're obsessed with this. What are you
you're
talking
totally
about?
obsessed. Well, I do the same thing because, like I said, I'll have a book at work, and my coworkers will be like, "Oh, are you reading another D.B. Cooper book?" And I immediately just want to be like, "No," but then I'm like, "Yeah, I am." One day
Yeah,
I'll
I
suck them
had the
in.
exact same experience at work. I was in the break room reading the book in the corner. No one was in there. And then someone just walked through and was like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And I was like, Max Gunther's DB Cooper, What Really Happened? And they're like, "Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool. Like, is that a new
yeah,
book?" It's like, "No. Have you read it before?" "Yes." Like, leave me alone.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's kind of well. You got more questions than I usually get. I just kind of usually get, "Oh, is that a D.B. Cooper book?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Well, yeah. After on the inside, I've said no. I'm like, "Yeah, it is," and they're like, "Okay, cool," and then they just keep walking by.
I'm
So
gonna
you got more
have to
questions than I did.
do the reverse of what they did in like those old 80s movies where it would be a Sports Illustrated magazine on the outside, but he's looking at a Playboy.
Yes.
I'm gonna put a
Yeah.
Playboy on the outside of my DB Cooper book. So when someone walks by, oh, it's just Darren looking at a Playboy.
It's just
Totally
Darren.
way more normal than him reading another DB Cooper book.
Right. Yeah, yeah. You could do that with most of these, I think. They're about the size of one of those.
Yeah, I could get away with that.
Yeah.
All right, on our scale of parachutes,
Yeah.
how many parachutes does this book get?
Oh, this is hard. I think I'm going to give it a three parachuter.
I'm going to give it three parachutes as well. It's required reading,
Yeah.
but this wouldn't be the book I would point to someone that's like, where can I learn the most about the case from?
Right.
This is when you're on your fourth DB Cooper book. This is a really, really good one. You want to
Yeah.
hear what Ralph had to say.
Yeah. Once you're in, I think you have to be in the vortex first, and then it's a good book. Then you would appreciate it. I don't think it would be appreciated if you were just kind of had dipped your toe into the vortex. I
Yes,
don't think you
that's
would
well
appreciate
said.
it as much. Yeah.
This is a book for the vortex.
Yeah. Yeah. And since this is a podcast for the vortex, it is required reading then.
It is required reading, absolutely.
Yeah. So two parachutes.
Speaking of required reading, the next one is literally one of like three books I always tell people to read on the case.
Yeah.
Um, it's not suspect specific. It's got a really good overview of what happened. It's well written. It's
Yeah.
exciting and fun to read. Finding DB Cooper, Chasing the Last Lead by Martin Andrade. And I enjoyed rereading this book so much. I also loved that he's like, oh yeah, describing the hijacking is obligatory, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do it real quick and get that out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's 2.5 pages, the hijacking, and he just goes over the broad strokes. There's nothing I can say where it's like, this detail was wrong or that
No.
detail was wrong. He put in what he knew was correct in what year's this book? 2014?
2016.
2016. Okay, yeah. So he
Yeah.
put in what was known and what was correct and what he could count on in 2016 without the
Mm-hmm.
FBI files.
Mm-hmm. And
And damn, he does a good job.
yeah, I actually texted Ryan because when I first started it, he is the only book, and I just wanted to make sure that correctly says $6,000 and not 5,800 at Tina Bar.
Yes, I have a note of that as well.
But no, you're right. Like, I had forgotten so much about this book. I had forgotten how much I loved this book. I love the way it's laid out. Like, this is perfect. Like, this is gold. I like a good bold print. Tell me about it. I like a good section. Like, it's perfection. It is perfection.
And I love the way he talks about the vortex as if he's an observer.
Yes.
As if he just quietly snuck in and took note of what everyone was doing and then wrote a book.
Yeah. A
When you
fantastic
know
book.
he's just like, he's so deep in this. He
Yeah.
could pretend he's not, but Marty's so deep in this.
Yeah. And he knows. He knows. But you're right. And by far, he gives the best overview of the hijacking. He tells you what happens. He tells you what you need to know. And keeps it short, sweet, and to the point, and then references Skyjack to it. Like, if you want to know more, read this book. It's perfect.
Yes, especially because it's also 3 pages long. And I just finished books where the hijacking is 20 pages long.
Right. No, I loved, like, I even said that the layout of this book speaks to my soul. I love it reminds me of a school book, like everything's just kind of sectioned. It's perfect.
Yeah, because every other book we've read, they're sort of assuming that you don't know anything about the case.
Mm-hmm.
And Finding DB Cooper, they're assuming you know the case.
Yes.
Or Marty's assuming you know the case on some level. And if you don't, he did put that chapter in there to tell you what happened.
Yeah.
But like right away, he's like, this is if you already are familiar with the case. We're going to continue from that point. Which is what I love because that's the way I started the show. It's like, all right, I'm going right deep into this with Bruce. I gave you a 20-second explanation of the hijacking. If you're not into DB Cooper already, this show's probably not for you.
Right. Sink or swim. You gave us a sink or swim. But I feel like we've all swam. and are better for it now.
Absolutely. Much better off.
Mm-hmm. But I do love, I mean, he goes over the clues, he goes over the tie, the high, everything. And I love his research on the jumps and the parachutes. By far the best.
By far the best. It's so tough to argue with that logic.
Oh, yeah. Like right there. I mean, the stories he told of the men that survived, and Cooper didn't have half of that going against him. I mean, he gives a great argument for survival.
Oh, yeah. And even if I'm reading this and I'm like, go to hell, Marty, you got everything wrong, he has the notes and the reference for everything in there. So, look, if you look at reference number 48, it will take you to the articles he used to get those numbers.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, props.
It's perfection. It is perfection. I forgot how amazing this book is. But yeah, I mean, I loved hearing about the interesting jumps. Like the one guy had to attach his parachute while in free fall in the dark.
Yes. That's an exhilarating minute or two there.
But yeah, like it was, and when one was only clipped to one D-ring, and most of them were thrown from exploding planes. Some of them lost consciousness during their free fall and still woke up in time to pull their ripcord.
Yep.
So I think, our parachute panel might be proud of this.
The parachute panel would agree with Marty that you will survive jumping out of an airplane if you have a parachute.
Yeah.
And he even mentions that Cooper's jump was likely the easiest of all the copycats, which I really appreciated. Because there's this like, he jumped in a storm into the woods and then he would have to survive for days. It's like, none of that's true.
Right.
None of that is true.
And then here's all these stories of men who had it way worse and still survived.
And still survived.
And still survived. But I did find, because I personally wavered on whether or not he lost the money. And he did make on page 25, he talks about how paracord is difficult to tie in a strong knot. And I hadn't thought about it that way. So now I do wonder if it did come loose. What do you think?
I do have a lost the money page 25 note. But I sort of disagree with that. Okay. I feel like paracord is very tough and very strong. And I don't think it would be difficult to do that. I think even I could, I'm not a skydiver by any means, but I could secure a 20-pound bag to me with paracord. Okay. I'm confident enough that I could do that. And
you could wrap it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then somebody else would have to jump with me. But I'd have the money on my
you'd be the money holder. Yeah. I don't know. I've never really handled paracord. So I don't know, like I've seen it. Well, I guess paracord is wrapped around Brian's money that he brought to CooperCon. That's paracord, right?
Yeah, it's like a badass version of shoelace.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah. So I guess I have kind of touched it and seen it. Yeah. We could probably figure out how to do this.
Yeah, plus we don't know what he knew. Maybe he was an Eagle Scout. And knots were really his jam. And he was the best at tying knots. But I mean, just the fact that he was unhappy with the bag that he was given and then cannibalizes one of the other chutes for the paracord leads me to believe that he knew what he was doing. Because it wouldn't be like, oh, well, there is some string over here. I'll just use this string. No, he was like, I'll use the paracord from the other parachute to secure the bag. He has time to prepare that. I don't think like that is the reason that he lost the money. Or like the Dan Greider holding it and then jumping out. I hate that too, because go ask any paratrooper, hey, I need you to get to the ground with this 20-pound duffel bag and I need you to just hold it. And they would tell you, that's not a great idea, but I could do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think it'd be quite dangerous. Because I've learned so much about parachuting and jumping since the vortex that I would have never known. And I did, kind of getting yourself balanced. so you don't go into a spin and stuff like that. So like I would think that would be really dangerous to jump out holding something like that and not letting go of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of in the all these books we've just read, there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of talk about him tying it as a drag bag,
Mm-hmm.
which everyone I've talked to is like, no, I wouldn't have done that. I would have tied it real close to my body.
Yeah.
Everyone, including people that have used drag bags
Yeah.
multiple times, were like, oh, it's just 20 pounds. Yeah, I'm tying that to my chest. Or when I had Mike Davis on the show, he's like, the
Yeah.
idea that this is going to be a drag bag to indicate my landing, it's just, it doesn't even make sense to me.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. You're landing in the dark and it maybe gives you a half a second to
That's
prepare for
yeah.
it.
Yeah. But I mean, I was trying to think. I listened to a podcast about a smoke jumper. She's only one of 14 female smoke jumpers. Um, and she was talking about how much they jump with like 100 pounds of gear. So I need to go back and listen to see how they tie it to themselves. And I know they land pretty hard because she says she's broken water bottles landing on them hard enough. So it does, I think he probably could have jumped and landed with it if he didn't lose it in the jump itself. But I don't think a weight's going to be a problem. Just figuring out where to put it on your body.
Let's talk about him losing the money for a second.
Okay.
This is not in any of the books, but it's something I've thought about a lot. So I'm jumping from an airplane
Mm-hmm.
tonight with $200,000 in $20 bills, and I lose the money on the way down. It lands randomly somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Everyone knows that I lost $200,000 somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Everyone is going to look for it, and if it is found, there's only a small chance it gets reported.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if you knew that somebody robbed a bank and then got into a police chase in your neighborhood and there was a rumor that they had lost 50 grand and Brad finds 50 grand
Mm-hmm.
next to a ditch, are you like, hey, we need to go to the police about this? Or are you like, oh, we're going to the store right now. I just saw
Yeah.
they've got these new coats at this one
Right.
place and I
Right.
gotta have one.
Yeah. Well, because I am that dork. I would probably be like, honey, we can't keep this. I would be horrible. I would be so paranoid. I would be the person that probably turned it in.
If I knew it was from a crime, I have no problem keeping that money. If it was reported that, you had saved all your money and you were on your way to go buy your first car, and then I found $12,000 and I'm like, oh man, Nicole lost $12,000 somewhere around here for her first car. I got to get this back to her. She's going to be stoked. But if it was Nicole robbed someone and took $12,000 and then I found it, I'm like,
I
might keep
guess,
this. Well, and if you robbed an insurance company and an airline
yeah.
specifically, if I heard that you robbed my favorite diner that's ran
Hmm.
by a family I know, I'm like, I'm giving the money right back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're a
I mean, I
struggling
guess
business that needs this.
it could be, pennies from heaven. I guess you would have to be like, well, maybe this was meant to be mine. This was my blessing. Maybe I
And
should keep it.
you also have to think about like the people that are choosing to go look for it are not the people who would be reporting that they found this.
That's true. But
They
how would
would
they?
report if they found a briefcase with a fake bomb inside. That would get reported.
Yeah.
But if they found that right next to a pile of money, now neither is getting reported. Or
How would you
maybe
launder
they
it?
get lucky and be like, oh yeah, I found a fake bomb in a briefcase. And by the way, there was nothing around it. There was nothing else.
Yeah. But how would you launder it? How would you launder it then? Back in 71. How would you get it?
I would have laundered it a small amount at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm not involved in the crime. So it would have to be obvious me passing those bills. And we're talking 20s, but the equivalent value is $100.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if I go to the bar and I pay with 100, you'll always see this. The cashier is going to swipe that little pen
Mm-hmm.
across to do a very quick like, oh, is Darren's 100 legit? Okay, yeah,
Right.
it is. But then because of that, I paid at the bar with $100 bill. They go to the bank, they turn that money in. The bank's like, hey, by the way, there were a couple of bills that you guys got. Do you remember anyone paying for drinks with 100? Like, oh yeah, actually on Tuesday, this guy Darren, he comes in, he likes to have a couple of beers and he paid with 100. And now that's coming right back to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it would have to be slow. I would probably choose to do most of it outside of the area that I found it.
Right.
But I don't know. I had the money expert on who was like, definitely none was ever spent. And here I am, like, oh, I know much better than the expert, which I
Right.
can't stand when other people do that.
It's so hard though to like I do remember him, Friedenberg, right? But it's so hard because you think back then money didn't wasn't around as long. It didn't have the life expectancy or that we have now because we don't use it as much. So maybe you could hold on to it and just kind of, spend one here, spend one there. Could you could go to Mexico or Canada and spend them and they would slowly make their way back over time. Like that wouldn't show up as much as them all being spent at once. So I wonder if he would disagree if you used 15 years to spend that money, if it would still show up the same way.
Yeah, I mean, his big deal was you're going to have over 9,000 bills and not a single one of them ever comes up in a flag transaction. I think statistically impossible is the phrase he used to paraphrase him, but I disagree with him,
I
even
do
though he
too, but
knows the
well, no one
most
was
about money.
looking. I mean, it's just statistically impossible
I
that
don't know.
everyone was
I
looking.
used to think that no one was looking, but most of the bills are like 65, 69 L numbered serial, lots of star notes. So if you're a teller in Bend, Oregon,
Mm-hmm.
and you got this list of the DB Cooper bills, you are not going to check every bill against that. But what you are going to do is be on the lookout for 1969 Series A, L
Mm-hmm.
serial numbers, or star notes. And so
Yeah.
when those come up, you're going to check it against the list. And that is one thing I really learned from him is no, the reason they had the money set up like that is here's a couple of specific flags so
Right.
that you don't have to check every bill
Well, that was smart, but
against the
not all of
list.
them were. Not all of them were like that.
No, not all of them. I think almost all of them came from the San Francisco Treasury. Most were 69 Series A, a bunch were 63 Series A.
So you would just spend the ones that weren't as noticeable.
Well, and
And
you might not even know that.
yeah.
If I
Well,
if
yeah.
because of the DB Cooper case, now I know some of this stuff about money, but without the DB Cooper case, if I just would have got 10,000 $20 bills that mysteriously a bunch of them were 1969 Series A star notes, I would never notice that.
No, me either. That's why, I mean, I guess bank tellers, that's their job. So that's why I guess I think probably could have gone unnoticed. But if that's what they're looking for, then that's what they're looking for. But if I had all that money, I would just spend all the ones that weren't as noticeable and hold on to the others.
I probably would have just tried to pass it off in small denominations. I'm not buying a car with it.
No.
Or if I am, I'm making payments on the car so
Yeah.
that I'm holding a note. And I'm buying a lot of stuff private party.
Smart.
Oh, look, Nicole is selling a new a smoker. I'm gonna
Right.
go buy that smoker with my
Yeah.
stolen bills.
No, that's true. Yeah. A lot of garage sale shopping
Yes,
slash the
absolutely. I,
trading
I almost
post.
said Craigslist, but Craigslist wasn't that active in 1971.
No, was Trading Post in 71? Because I don't think Trading Post is around anymore, but
It
were
would
they
have
around
been
in
newspaper
71?
classifieds.
Yeah, I remember those.
I do too. I remember looking at him. My grandpa would like be like, "Hey, look at this guy in the classified selling this Corvette. Can you believe that?"
Yes,
And
yes.
like, I can't imagine going to my local newspaper and paying $10 to put a small print ad in a small section of a newspaper. And like, if I'm a used Corvette buyer in 1992, the idea that that's how I have to find a Corvette is crazy.
But we were all using it. We were all looking. I remember looking when I was like 15. I remember starting to look there for a car. I would go straight to the automobile section. I would also go over to the jewelry section, but I would also check. I would start in the automobile section.
I remember one of my first jobs at McDonald's. I saw the ad in the paper. I was like, oh, McDonald's in Chehalis is hiring? I'm 16. I could use a job.
But yeah, no, I don't know. Well, my first job, I used to sell cemetery property. That was my first job.
You sold plots in a graveyard?
When I was like 17, 18.
Why are they hiring a young woman to do that job?
Oh, no one else wants to do it. And you're just young. So you just cold call people and sell. That's why I'm not a huge cell phone person. You're not going to find me like talking a long time on the phone because that's what broke me. Because I would spend like 4 hours a day talking to people on the phone, trying to sell them cemetery property. And I worked at a cemetery. So you just go there in the office every night and call people and try to sell cemetery property.
If I'm dealing with someone at a funeral home, I want to deal with like a 57-year-old lady that's like super sympathetic and nice.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that I'm going to talk to a 17-year-old girl, I'm like, can you get me someone else, please? Like,
right. Well, I would just do the phone calls. I would just do the phone calls. When they came in, they got the 50-year-old man.
Okay.
But I just did the phone calls.
Okay,
like
good.
I was like in the back of like the little, because it wasn't a funeral home there. It was like just the office that you would go in to like, make your arrangements and stuff. At least that's the one I worked at. But that, it was just kind of an
Did you ever do
there.
any grave robbing?
No, but I learned to drive at that cemetery. That's where I learned to drive. That's where my dad taught me because he said I couldn't kill anyone there. So
they're already dead.
Already dead. So that's where I learned to drive. We would go there and we would just kind of circle because all the gravestones are flat at that cemetery, so you weren't having to worry about running over anything. Although I did not. But yeah, so that's where I learned to drive because there's this one long road at the back of the cemetery, and when we would hit that corner, he'd be like, floor it, and I would floor it to the end of that road and then like take the corner real quick. So like 8 p.m. on the in the summer, I was out there with Dad learning how to drive.
I would be so mad if I went to go put flowers on my grandma's grave and there's a 15-year-old girl driving over headstones.
I stayed on the road. But he did, yeah. So that's where I learned to drive. But yeah, my first job was a little different than your first job.
A little bit different. All right, back to the book review thing we were supposed to be doing.
Back to business. He does talk about, thinking about the money. He does say that if someone found the money, the reward was less than 200,000. So they probably would have kept it.
Yeah.
Not spent it, but buried it. Which leads to maybe Tina Barb.
Yeah, and there is a lot of Tina Barr talk in this book. Mm-hmm. And it's before the diatoms on the bills. But even still, he's just like, I don't know. There's no way. He's like, natural arrival seems plausible, but doesn't make sense. Human burial seems plausible, but doesn't make sense.
Right.
And that's where we stand now.
Still. Yeah, I did. So like, he talks about how they took it home and tried to separate the bills with soap and bleach. So they rinsed the bills.
I've heard different versions of the story. I think they were trying to do whatever they could. Just like I would if I found money in this condition.
Same.
I'm trying to do whatever. Because I've heard like, then they soaked it in dish soap. And then somebody said, dry it with a hair dryer.
Yeah.
After doing that, and they'll separate and then maybe bleach. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure they tried whatever they could because the goal was this is our money now. Yeah. And we have to separate these bills so we can exchange them.
Yeah.
Have you ever exchanged a bill?
No.
You've never had a damaged bill that you had to exchange at the bank?
No. I mean, because can't you just tape them together? Like I've paid for something that I've
If
taped
you have,
together.
I want to say it's 60% of a bill.
Yeah.
If you
Three
have
corners.
60% or three quarters, then
Yeah.
yeah, you can get a new one. A friend and I were doing some work for this guy named Jack Bell, who has since passed away. Rest in peace, Jack. But um, he paid us, and we were supposed to get $25 each. And I'm like 14, and this is two
Hmm.
days of work, manual labor. I'm stoked to get $25. And he's like, "Oh yeah, you guys did great. Thank you so much." And he goes to give me and Kevin a $50 bill. And right before he gives it to us, he tears it in half and gives us each half a bill. And I'm like, "Why did you do that?" And he laughs and he's like, "If you guys take that to the bank on your way home, they'll give you a new one or they'll give you different bills." I just thought it'd be funny. And we were so scared going to the bank with a
Yeah.
$50 bill ripped in half. And we're like, "Here you go. Can we please have 10 fives?"
Uh-huh.
And I remember, it was a grown up to me at the time, but it was probably a 23-year-old gal.
Yeah.
And she looked at it and she was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And then pushed it to the side and gave us 10 fives and we walked out. We're like, "Wow, that was actually really easy."
Oh wow. No, I've never had to turn it in. But I've rarely gone into a bank in my life.
I mean, since banking on my phone,
Yeah.
I've gone in like three times when my wife was like, "Hey, we just added this account. I need you to show up and sign this thing," or something like that.
Yeah.
That's when I've gone in.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
same.
I don't like who's going to the bank to deposit their paycheck? Who wants to go wait in the line like, "Oh, I've bought cars where I guess I went to the bank because it's like I
Oh
need
yeah.
$7,200
Yeah, yeah.
and that's not an ATM thing really.
No.
But yeah, I don't
Yeah, since being like a teenager, like in early 20s, I don't think I've been into a bank that many times since.
Yeah. I don't need to go.
Yeah, there's no reason to go.
And
But I
if I have
do,
to go, I'm annoyed. Why do I have to
yeah,
go in for this?
exactly. Yeah. I mean, I usually call them because, or, try to go through the drive-through if they have them. They don't have as many anymore for the drive-throughs for some of the banks.
I'm wildly against drive-throughs.
Hey, really?
Yeah, I would if I'm getting fast food,
Uh-huh.
I will park my car and go in and get it to go. I just don't like a drive-through.
Do you feel like you don't get as good service in a drive-through, or you just don't like being handed things through your window?
I don't know, I just don't want to sit in my car in a line. Like
Oh,
I'd rather walk in, I'm getting out of my car for a minute. I mean, there are some exceptions when my kids were little, and then it's like,
yeah,
do I want to get them out of the car? No, because then I have to
yeah.
put them back in the car. But if it's just me alone, I'm not doing any drive-throughs. I'm
Interesting.
going in and I'll get it to go. There last week even I at work I had time to kill waiting
Hmm.
on someone. So I went in, ordered my food, and went back to my car and sat and listened to the radio in my car, eating it. So I could have eaten in there, but I wanted to
Yeah,
listen to a show. So
yeah,
well, I'll just eat it in my car.
yeah. No, I'm a drive-through person. I love like a Starbucks. I love ordering ahead on the app and then just rolling through the drive-through and picking it up. I'm a total drive-through person.
Well, that's kind of smart. But then you still have to wait in the drive-through line.
Sometimes it depends. Like if I'll order it on the app and then I will go in sometimes if the line is too long. I'll just pull in and walk up and be like, "Hey, I said I was going to pick this up through the drive-through, but your line's too long." And they'll just hand it to me. So I guess I do go in every now and then if the line's too long.
Aren't we supposed to be doing a DB Cooper show? Why are
We
we now
are
talking about drive-throughs?
because I was going to ask you about diatoms. We were talking about diatoms
Diatoms. That's
and
how
we
we
ended up
got
in a
here.
drive-through because I was wondering, I don't know enough about diatoms. When they rinsed the bills, obviously it was still winter, right? But the water, there are diatoms in your water, and your water comes from a treatment facility. What diatoms are in the water from the treatment facility? Are they going to match the same season?
There are diatoms in my tap water.
I think so. I tried to Google. Tom's the person that could tell us. But when I was reading this, um, I was kind of like, but are there always diatoms? They're tiny. I think they're little. I don't know. But if there are, will the diatoms that are coming out of your tap match the diatoms of that season?
That's an interesting question I've never thought about.
If diatoms can do that.
I don't want diatoms in my tap water. I don't want to be drinking diatoms.
Maybe they're fiber.
I guess mineral water, people, oh, it's mineral water.
Yeah.
That's
I
basically just
mean,
that kind of shit, right?
yeah. I mean, it's treated water. I mean, the water came from, like a sewer treatment, right? A lot of the drinking water. I mean, the reservoir we live on is drinking water and it goes through a treatment plant. So I don't know how much gets taken out or, what their filtration level was. But I did wonder that when I was reading that. I was like, I wonder if the tap, since they did rinse it, I wonder if the tap diatoms are different from the seasonal diatoms. And could that have gotten in the bills instead?
Well, it's a good question that you or I are definitely not qualified
Nope.
to answer.
Well, that's Tom when we see Tom.
But another thing that I've thought about specifically diatoms is if I found something on the beach, what are the odds I'm going to rinse it off in the water right next to me?
Yeah.
Like
High.
very
Highly.
high.
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty much everything you pick up on the beach, you're going to rinse in the ocean or
Yeah.
whatever water's there. Yeah.
And apparently they didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but I haven't found money on the beach. So I don't know what I would do if I found that. And if it was kind of falling apart, would you want to risk losing it in the water?
Maybe not.
I don't know. I guess we'd have to be in that situation. Maybe we'll
But
find
it
some money.
was like when they originally picked it up, they didn't think it was money.
Oh,
Like
that's true. So
it
they
was
could have
just
just
a
rinsed it.
pile of garbage. And then,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, this actually isn't garbage. This is money.
Huh. We'll have to ask Brian their thought process.
But he's 8.
I mean, yeah, and most likely you would take it to the nearest water source and rinse it off. So I don't know. I don't know how, I mean, it's got to be winter diatoms in that water, not
I would
spring.
think so. It being the tail end of winter and all.
Yeah, yeah. Mm, we'll have to get someone on to figure that out for us. We'll get Tom in all of his spare time.
I had this is a funny story. I'm not sure if I've told it on the show before or not, but I reached out to a gal who is like, she is Billy Badass when it comes to diatoms in the Columbia River. And like, that's her thing. That's what
Mhm.
she does. And I reached out to her. I'm like, hey, I don't know if you saw this article or not, but I'd like to talk to you about it on the show. And I sent her like the scientific journal or whatever journal it was that Tom K got that published in. And she reached back out and she was like, you know what? I had just read this the other day and it's so interesting and I would love to do the show. And I was like, okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened, but then she reaches out like 2 or 3 days later when we're kind of like finalizing, oh yeah,
Uh-huh.
let's do it on Thursday at 8. And she was like, I listened to the show and I'm no longer interested in doing it. I don't want to be involved with DB Cooper. And I was like, what? What
What?
did she hear? Like, what
Whose
episode was it?
episode?
And what did I say?
It might have not been you. It might have just been.
The subject matter that I'm actively involved in? Yeah, not me at all. It's just what I'm saying and who I'm talking to, but nothing to do with me.
Nothing to you. Don't take it personally. Well, I mean, but I don't know. I don't know how it is up in, the Pacific Northwest. Like, that's local for you guys. I mean, I can't imagine something like that here.
I don't know. I figured it was maybe because of her job. She told someone
Oh,
else and they were like, don't do that. You
maybe.
don't want to be associated with that.
That's a shame.
It is a
She doesn't
shame.
know what
Not
she's
the only
missing.
time that's happened to me, but
She doesn't know what she's missing.
all right. Back to Marty Andrade's
Yes,
book.
Marty's amazing book. And I was trying to look at my notes. They talk about the bag a lot. Tina saw a small green paper bag. Um, and then Clara in the book says it was a green canvas bag. So we've got two greens. So what do you think it was?
I don't know. Somebody posted, it might have been on Facebook or Drop Zone, but there was like a military green,
Hmm.
like kind of plasticky waterproof bag that paratroopers used. It was like you can put this stuff in this bag and put that bag in something else, and if it gets wet, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because it's its dimensions are sort of loosey-goosey.
Hmm.
The material is all over the place. It was reported as plastic, it was reported as paper, it was reported as canvas.
Yeah.
And so that green bag is like a weird half canvas, half plasticky
Yeah.
thing that's really interesting.
But he does make a comment that I hadn't thought about, but that he could have put some of the money into that bag to even out his weight of the money. So he wouldn't, he could disperse it more evenly across his body when he jumped, which I didn't, one, remember reading that or hadn't really even thinking about that, splitting the money up into two containers and hooking them to you. I know Tina didn't see that, but it was a good idea.
I don't know, I feel like I'd rather have one big bag than two small ones.
Can you
When we're
like,
talking about things that could be flying around.
well, if you're like strapping them to you, couldn't you like just wrap them around each leg? Would that work?
Yeah, I guess so. That could potentially work.
Or around your torso? No, because then it would get in the way, I guess. But a leg, that's what Mac did. He hooked it to his leg. So maybe you could hook it to each of your one to each leg.
Yeah, the green bag is so
Hmm.
curious.
Yeah,
Because also did he bring something in that bag? And that's what
maybe.
I want to know more than anything else. Because if he just had a folded up waterproof bag in his
Hmm.
pocket, okay, that's interesting. But that's not what it seems like. It seems like he showed up with the bag and the briefcase.
Yeah, because which book was it? Skyjack, where they say or Flo saw him put it under the seat in front of him. Which book was that, or was that something else? But one of them said that they did see the bag up under the seat.
Yes, I
So there
think
had to have
that's
been something
Skyjack.
in it.
Because in Skyjack, aren't they also mentioning like they asked him to put his briefcase under the seat and
Hmm.
then he did that and then pulled it back out?
Hmm.
So I think that's Skyjack. But who knows? I just
Yeah.
read 7 books in a row.
Right.
They're all one book at
That
this
I'll
point.
say it right. This is true. This is true. I know. So I always feel bad if I get something wrong, but in my head, it's just all one big mess now from the truth versus what we've read. But this one's been the one of the best as far as the facts getting straight. But I do. I mean, I'd have a snack, a cap. I don't know what else in there.
I don't know. Everything I think I want to put in there, I could put in my pocket because I have
Yeah.
on a trench coat and a suit.
Yeah.
So even if I want to bring a 9 millimeter, because I have a trench coat and a suit, I can put a 9 millimeter in my coat pocket and no one's gonna know. I can have a pocket knife in one of my pockets and no one's gonna know. I can have a wool cap, gloves, and goggles in my pocket and no one will know. So what do I need this bag for?
Did it have anything in it at all? Like, did he just bring it to help carry some money?
Well, if he's not bringing anything in the bag and just using it to carry money, then the bag should have been in his pocket.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, he had pretty decent shoes on to jump with, so he wouldn't really need boots per se.
No, and if you're gonna wear pants, there are many like shin high boots that you
Hmm.
could wear that would pass as dress shoes
Yeah.
in pants, as long as your pants are covering the top of the boot. If you have sort
Mhm.
of high water pants on with combat boots, it looks goofy.
Right.
But if your pants are falling on your boots, you could wear a crazy aggressive boot and get away with it looking like a dress shoe.
Yeah, that's true. Unless he had like a change of clothes. I mean, I know he could have worn clothes up under his suit, but maybe he had a change of clothes in there so he wouldn't look like the hijacker
That wouldn't be a bad idea.
or be dry at least.
Because if let's say he lands in Amboy, Washington, jumps out of the plane, lands in Amboy, puts his suit coat and pants in the bag, and puts on Levi's and a flannel shirt,
Hmm.
and now he's a completely different person. He's
Yeah.
just one of the regular people that lives in
Yeah.
Amboy.
Yeah. And he didn't have to worry about, and then he could just bury the bag. That was something interesting watching the hunting history show when they buried the parachute. I didn't realize how easy that was to just be able to walk right by that and not see that. So, I mean, he could
Yeah,
have easily just buried stuff.
and the ground where he's jumping is incredibly soft. If you had a, a, a broken twig, you
Mhm.
could dig 3 feet into that ground with a broken
Oh,
twig. It's no problem. It's going to be loose, moist dirt.
oh, so he could have easily put anything in there.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't
If you
know.
let me wash my hands, I could bury a parachute in that earth with my bare hands.
Wow. So then, yeah, he could have had, who knows where it was, what it was in there. I'm going to go with change of clothes.
Change of clothes is a good one because you can't put an extra shirt and pants in your pocket,
Hmm.
but you could put gloves and goggles in your pocket.
Hmm. Yeah. And he could have a baseball cap in there, something to completely change him
Yeah.
with the change of clothes. Or he could not have any of that stuff. But I mean, he could wear it under a suit, but I don't know. That's what Martin did.
Yeah, that's probably all I would do too is just put long underwear on under my
Mm.
suit. Yeah, it might be a little warm on the plane, but you're only going to be really cold for a minute. And then
Yeah,
once you're on the ground, it's like 47 degrees and rainy.
right. But
It's
wouldn't you
not
be hot
terrible.
on the plane and wearing double
In
layers
a full suit with a raincoat and long underwear, yeah.
and a whole nother set of clothes up underneath?
Yeah, and it's not
Yeah.
called out that he was sweating like crazy.
No. So
Which if it
I'm
would have
gonna
been
go with
me, they'd be like, "Man, this guy had sweat dripping from his sideburns. His nose was sweating. His eyebrows were sweating somehow." Yeah.
absolutely. Me too. There's no way I could layer that much. Yeah, so I'm gonna go with the change of clothes. That's what he had in the bag. I'm gonna go with that. Because that would just make him too obvious too if he was sitting there sweating. Okay. What else
Uh,
did we learn?
he calls out metallurgist quite a few times,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is it's pretty badass in 2016.
Yeah. To know those things.
And we had Tom K's original tie analysis,
Hmm.
but it wasn't pointing to metallurgist
No,
at that point in time, really.
no. He went straight for it.
He did, and mentions it several times at several points in the book,
Hmm.
like potentially a metallurgist.
Yep. And then doesn't he even go down the percentage of when he talks about Gunther, like what Dan LeClaire's job could have been? He kind of is like, well, mathematically, he probably was an industrial salesman of some sort, like based on what men were at the time, their jobs and stuff.
Right.
So, I mean,
If in DB Cooper what really happened, they were like, this guy was an ice cream man. He was definitely an ice cream man. And we were all like, that's ridiculous. And
mhm.
then we find who Cooper was and he was an ice cream man. Is that a coincidence? Or is it so on the nose
Yeah, it makes
that,
you think.
yeah,
Like, and I mean, Marty Mandrade did like so much research. Like, laid out the math and everything for it. So I mean, it makes complete sense.
It's tough to argue any of his points.
Yeah, I mean, it's perfect. It's perfection.
That's a bold statement, Nicole.
Well, I mean, because he goes into Gunther, but he doesn't. I think he has the curiosity that we all do when we read Gunther book. Like, could we actually figure out who this person is based on what information? Yeah, I was even thinking that when I read Gunther, like, oh, couldn't we actually try to figure this person out?
The
Obviously,
first time I read
name.
Gunther, that was my frame of thought. Like, we could figure out who this guy is.
Yeah, so I feel like his reference to Gunther in that is basically kind of like that. Like, we could probably figure this out because he goes through all of he even talks about Dick Lepsy and all of the other people. So
I did enjoy there's like two super brief chapters. One is him briefly reviewing a bunch of books, and it's like one paragraph for each book. And then there's another chapter where he reviews a bunch of suspects.
Yeah, I love
that
one.
And it's one paragraph per suspect.
Yeah, it was perfect. I mean, and he even did Melvin Wilson. He did Don Burnworth. He had a bunch of the ones that typically don't get talked about as much.
And he had like a Jack Long in his suspect list. There was a Jack Lake, John Lake.
Yeah, John Lake. Yeah,
John
he was
Lake.
the
I was so close.
Sports editor.
And I had to look that one up.
Okay, what did you find?
It's just a guy that went missing, and it's become this missing persons case.
Oh, okay.
Where one of the theories floated is that he became DB Cooper when it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's like Ryan saying that if we would have never found John List, that he would have been the patron saint of no pull.
Yeah.
Because you could just pin it on List, and List is a no pull because clearly he didn't know what he was doing.
Yeah.
But because List was found, John List was found.
He was found here.
And fully admitted to murdering his entire family, but was like, oh yeah, that DB Cooper thing, I had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Clearly not him, doesn't fit, doesn't work or anything, but became a suspect just because of the time frame. I think that John, what was it? We just had it.
John Lake,
thank you. Yeah. John Lake is the same thing. Like, he happened to go missing during a time period where Cooper was shortly after.
Yeah, because he was 67. He disappeared in 67.
Which isn't even that close.
No. I mean, List was much closer.
List is like October of 71.
Yeah. Yeah, right. I mean, he is kind of a perfect suspect. He's got the thin nose. Does he have kind of a pouty lip? I can't remember. So yeah, you're right. If he hadn't been found, then he would be perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah. That was what 80 something he was found. 86?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite episodes I did. I had that guy Joe Sharkley on the show. To talk about John List, and I remember like, hey, I just read your book about John List. You want to come on the show, and I know he's not Cooper, but he's listed on the Wikipedia, and I just want to hear your thoughts. And he was like so stoked to do it, and he was like, I just want to make sure that you're not going to be like John List is DB Cooper. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not thinking that. I just want to hear what you have to say. And then in talking to him, he's like, man, I'm getting angry at John List again now, just talking about this. That son of a bitch.
Yeah. Obviously not a nice person.
No, it's not nice to murder your entire family.
No. So was it on 115, like 116, he's talking about Rackstraw. Did Rackstraw fake his death? Did he?
Rackstraw did a fake his death attempt. He flew some plane out, either over the bay or the ocean or a lake, and then called in a distress call. Flew that plane to a different hangar and repainted it and put a new number on it.
Ooh.
And it was more about stealing the plane than faking his death.
Uh, so he kind of did like a Wally Thrasher um kind of thing. He was like a drug runner here in Virginia, but basically he faked, well, we think he faked his own death. Basically crashed a plane in like Costa Rica, and his wife got a death certificate out of like Jamaica for him. But they haven't seen him since. Like this was probably 20 years ago, and he was about to get really busted, and he kind of had a plane incident, and no one's ever seen him again. But yeah, there's a great book called Chasing the Squirrel about him.
I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah. It's so he was like in South like Bland, Virginia. So I've got a couple friends who actually knew his wife and lived out there and know the whole area. It's a great book. It's an easy read. It's a journalist that wrote the book about him. But yeah, it's called Chasing the Squirrel. And it's about Wally Thrasher. And it's a fun read.
I will
add that to your
out.
52 books for this year. But yeah, that's a good one. I do, I love a good fake death. That's, it's interesting. I listened to a whole podcast about it one time. It was great.
Faking my death isn't really on my bucket list, but attending my own funeral would be so awesome.
You think?
I do think it would be awesome. Because if you look at when someone dies, all of their sins are forgiven and it's nothing but love and support and they're missed. So if you died or you faked your death and then went to your funeral, everyone is just going to be like, man, Nicole was the best and she was the greatest. I love Nicole so much and we're all going to miss her so much. Even your coworker that you hate, that thinks you're a dumb bitch.
Yeah.
She's going to be like, Nicole was such a sweetheart and I really am going to miss her.
Right.
And you're like,
she had a smile that would light up the room.
And I know that you hate me too.
Right. That's true. Everyone is nice. Everyone, or they just wouldn't go. I guess like the people who just don't like us wouldn't go to our funerals. So we wouldn't have to deal with it.
You want to go to your own funeral?
I guess so. Yeah. I think it would be kind of fun.
And then I could be like, I can't believe that's all my sister had to say. Like, it seems like you didn't put a lot of effort into that speech. Come on, Julia. Like, really? That's all you got?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a huge, I guess it would be interesting to see what people actually say about you in front of everyone else. They're not going to say anything bad. So
of course not. Have you ever been to a funeral where they're like, you know what? Let me tell you all the dirty laundry about Trina. Trina was up to no good.
No, that's the talk in the back of the funeral. So all the good talk is up in the front. But if you go to like a really good one, all that gossip is in the back or at the dinner afterwards. That's when they're like, well, they used to do this. And did you know they used to do that? That's when you get all the gossip.
That's true. I've never been to a funeral where there was like gossip like that.
Oh, you need to come to the South.
I think the people that I've known that there would be that, there was no funeral.
Oh, okay. Then they just kind of get rid of all of that. I can see that.
Yes, it just goes away.
I can see that. Yeah. You just don't have a chance to talk about it. No, we're going to go and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, that's what I'm there for too.
Yeah. So honestly, I'd probably rather go to the dinner after my funeral than the funeral. Because then I could actually see what they're saying, or the lunch, or whatever time my funeral is going to be.
See, my curiosity is like, this is all I get? Like, okay, the performance of my daughter singing Hallelujah was great.
Yeah.
But like I said, my sister didn't put a lot of work into her speech. It seems hastily prepared. Judging her greatly on that. It's like, why did you play this song? Did you think I liked that song?
Right.
Is this for you guys? Shouldn't this be my funeral? It should have been a Metallica song that played.
Right. But do you want all of that fanfare at your funeral?
No, and in my fantasy, because I would never like that in the first place,
Yeah, me
the
either.
reason I like or I fantasize about liking the fanfare at my funeral is that I'm dead
Yeah,
and this is what it's going to be. And I have no, I get to watch it and
yeah.
not have to sit in it. Because if you were going to throw a party for me, like,
Hmm.
oh, Darren, uh, happy 40th birthday. We threw you this big surprise party and everyone you know is here and everyone that loves you is here. I would want to leave
Yes,
immediately.
yes.
I,
Same,
I don't want to be a part of that.
same.
But if there was a funeral and I can sit in the corner and not
And
be
just
there, but
listen.
still be the star of the show, somehow that sounds better.
Okay, I mean, I could see that, but I'm right there with you. I don't like all of that extra drama that goes around all of that. Let's just get cremated and be done with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to cost. Then it
Oh
gets
my
crazy.
gosh, it is so crazy. I think it's like 7 grand just to be cremated these days.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Especially if you have a relative that didn't have any money that
Yeah.
dies,
Mm-hmm.
then you are like on the hook
Mm-hmm.
for bills,
Oh yeah.
which has
And you
happened
have
to me.
oh well, we're all gonna be turned into a reef and dropped in the ocean. You can have like 4 adults and as many pets as you want. And you just get mixed up in concrete and they make you a reef and they take you out to the ocean and they just drop you in. And then they give you your loved ones like a plaque of where you are. But then they don't have to worry about coming to visit you. You're not taking up any space. You're giving a fish a home. You know. So that's what we're going to do.
Throw me on a compost pile. I won't care. I'm dead.
It's true, right? Like it's kind of like it doesn't really matter. You're gone. Just maybe you could donate your body to science. Go to the body farm.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem with that either. Somebody
Yeah.
else can have my eyeballs.
Yeah. You don't need them anymore.
No,
Mhm. Yeah.
they're not that great though, so probably don't want my eyeballs.
Yeah. I'll have to. Yeah.
All right, stop
Uh,
getting off topic,
I
Nicole.
know. Same. Let's get back together.
All right.
Uh
Towards the start of his book, I really liked the talk of the vortex and that the drop zone had recently been shut down.
yes. I was never on the drop zone. I
When I
tried.
started my show
Yeah.
was right after the drop zone got locked. So like this book and the start of my show are like so close together because I think the drop zone got locked twice before it was permanently locked.
Okay.
And so there were like posts that disappeared because people got banned.
Hmm.
Then it got locked. Then it was unlocked. Then we behaved badly so that it got locked again. And then it was just like forever locked. And then in like 2020, they unlocked it. And I absolutely love the transparency and honesty. And this is the old drop zone. Now it's like
Yeah.
skydivingforum.net or .com, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But when they unlocked it, there was this thread about like news and activities on the site, which no DB Cooper person would ever go to because they only cared about that one thread.
Right.
But I looked at that and there was like this discussion of do we unlock the DB Cooper thread for the purposes of traffic? Because what percentage of traffic to the drop zone is the vortex?
Mm,
I would say it's over 80%.
right. Yeah.
Because even if you look at that thread on the drop zone,
Hmm.
there's 8 people that post,
Hmm.
and no one else really does. But there's 100 people that check it a lot.
Right. Every minute, every day.
I
See
check
what's
it realistically 10 times a week.
really.
Yeah, because I have a regular check on it, but then there will be like, I can't believe Flyjack just said that to Ryan. I can't believe Ryan just said that about Georgia. And so then I'm like, I got to check back in an hour to see if
Right.
they
See what
responded.
happened. Okay, maybe I need to. So, like, I got on before I really knew anyone, and tried to read, and I just couldn't. It was too hard. So maybe now that I kind of am more familiar with the people, maybe I'll have to try reading some of this stuff again and see if I can.
The forum format, I like it a lot more than Facebook because Facebook things just disappear.
It
It's not
does.
searchable. If you're not
No.
there, you don't see it. And on a forum, things stay for a very long time. It's
Hmm.
very linear. Here's the start, here's the end. But when you're looking at something where you're on the 2678th page,
Yes.
at that point, it's impossible
Yeah.
to go back to the beginning.
I was overwhelmed when I tried.
Yeah, as you should be. And this is a conversation that has been going on for well over a decade, on to 2 decades. Would you show up if me and Brad had been talking for 20 years? Are you just going to walk in and be like, "Oh, I sorry I missed it. Where'd you guys start?"
Right.
Like,
Yeah. No.
we've been talking for 20 years. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
go all the way back.
Yeah. Which is hard to, and I did try that. I tried to like, and I was like, I can't do this. This is too much. I can't do this. So I quickly, as quickly as I found it, I then forgot about it because it was too frustrating. I'm too far gone to get in it.
And one thing I really don't like that they've done is when you ban someone,
Mm-hmm.
their posts go away. So all of Robert Blevins' posts are gone. There are a couple other people, their posts are gone. And while there are times where you need to tell someone, okay, you've behaved badly and
Mm-hmm.
you are no longer welcome here, the work that they'd already done or the posts that they already made,
Right.
that should stay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Nicole went around calling everyone scumbags and she can't be here anymore. But her posts before you're all scumbags, those should stay
Yeah.
because she was part of the conversation.
Yeah. And I think maybe when I was trying to read it, maybe some things were missing. So I couldn't really follow it that well. So no, I agree. They should be able to keep all of those that they just get rid of. But then again, that format is not easy for me to follow.
No, but I'm not sure of a better one because, like on Facebook, if I posted today, hey, here's the most incredible evidence in the case. It's so interesting. Everyone's going to
Yeah.
love this. 3 days later, you'll never be able to find that.
No, you'll have to try to search for it because Facebook gives it to you in some weird manner where I've even had to try to find it so that it filters it from newest. So I can like at least find it in some kind of time frame. But yeah, it's gone and then you can't figure out where it is. So I don't know. I think you need to come up with your own forum.
No, 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 no. The last thing I want to do is be involved in any sort of moderation, in any sort of he said, she did this to me, he did that to me. I don't want to be involved in any of that. I don't even participate in any group discussion.
Yeah, I'm kind of a lurker. I like to read what other people have to say. But yeah, maybe here and there I'll say something. But yeah, I'm just kind of I lurk. I read. Just kind of
I
hang back.
I never really posted anything, and then when I started the show, I thought I need to be more active in
Mm-hmm.
this so that people know who I am. But then real quick I was like, isn't it better if I'm just completely neutral on everything and I have no opinion?
Yeah.
So I was like, that's probably what I should do. It's rare. There were a couple of times where someone provoked me into saying something. And even then it's like I never said that. I never thought that. You don't know this about me. You've never asked me. But even then I look at that, I'm like, I regret that. I
Yeah.
should have just not said anything. I should have
Yeah.
just let it ride.
Keep scrolling. Just keep scrolling.
But I'm checking this stuff all the time. I'm not going to
Yeah.
pretend I'm not I'm
Oh,
not
yeah,
doing that. I'm not reading all this.
absolutely. I always, if there's a new post, absolutely. At least on the Facebook stuff, I'm always like, oh, well, let's see. And then, yeah, who had what to say about that? And just, yeah, it is easy to get sucked into. Um, but no, he did talk about that. And maybe it was him. He was talking about someone from the um, DB Cooper forum, right? That made the
FOIA requests.
the flight path. Who's Robert?
Oh, R99.
Yeah, who's that? Is he?
Robert Nichols.
Yeah.
I hilariously or offensively, depending on how you look at it, I invited him on the show once,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, Darren, but I'm deaf, so I could never do your show. And I was like, oh my God, I did not know that.
Oh,
But yeah, he used to be super active. He's not so much anymore.
okay.
And I would normally be hesitant to say his name, but it is like printed in this book
Yeah,
that we're
yeah.
reviewing. So
Because when it said, I was kind of like, I don't know that name right offhand. Was he the one that also did the 3D flight path?
that was Dave Brown, Shutter,
Okay, Shutter.
that
Yes,
ran the
Shutter.
DB Cooper forum. He
Yeah.
had I think it's still on YouTube, but he has a 727 flying the exact flight path. And it's like 90 minutes long.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's like, this is the flight path flying over exactly what it would have been at this point in time.
That's
It's
awesome.
cool to see. I'm not sure like how valuable of a research tool it is, but it
Right.
is like, oh, that's what the lights of Portland kind of would have looked like
Yeah.
from the cockpit.
So it goes all the way from Seattle to like Reno?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Yeah, that's I agree. I don't think it would help much, but it'd be cool to kind of immerse yourself into the I guess if you're a method actor and you were trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, it's like going on into that 727 at the Museum of Flight. Like,
That was
am I
awesome.
closer to solving the case now because I got to do that?
Mm-mm.
No, but it was cool to like stand in a 727.
Yeah.
It would have been cooler if I got to smoke a cigarette in there,
And
but
not have the plexiglass
and not have
everywhere.
the plexiglass in the
Yeah.
back. Yeah, because I wanted to sit, of course, in
Yes,
18E.
right. Me too. And like you just couldn't even go back. As soon as you got on, the plexiglass was right there. So you could just kind of peek over there and see what it looked like.
Such a wasted opportunity because they could have been like, for $100, we'll let you sit in that seat and smoke a cigarette.
Right.
And boy, I couldn't have given over $100 faster if that would have been a
Really.
choice. Also, I don't like smoking cigarettes, but I would have loved to have smoked a cigarette in that moment
Yeah. With some sunglasses.
with sunglasses on.
That would be a profile picture forever. Get you,
Oh, of course.
yeah. That
It
wouldn't
would
go
be the
anywhere.
only picture of me anyone ever saw. Did you smoke? No, never
No,
smoked, but
no.
in that moment I did.
Yeah. All right. What else do we love about his book?
There, I have note, page 17, there's talk of negotiable currency.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how I feel about negotiable currency. Is that something Cooper said, or is that a game of telephone thing?
That I have no clue. I'm it doesn't make sense to say negotiable currency when you're asking for it,
As
right?
an American
No.
asking for American currency, why would you say negotiable?
Yeah. So the only thing I could think was, I mean, because he says maybe he was Canadian, or maybe, I would ask for American currency if I was going to a different country, right? So he don't want them messing with the parachute. So he basically made them think he was either going to make the crew jump out or make a hostage jump out. Well, what if I say I want $200,000 and I'm going to Mexico? I don't want to end up with like 200,000 pesos. in Mexico. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want them to try to like shortchange me in any way.
True, but $200,000 is more obvious in Mexico than 200,000 pesos.
Yeah, unless he wasn't
And by the
going
way,
to
we're assuming a
Mexico.
one-to-one value on dollars and
Right.
pesos here.
But what if he wasn't going to Mexico? What if he was like, I'm just going to tell them I'm going to Mexico. I don't want to end up here, in Oregon with 200,000 pesos that I can't do anything with.
But why use the term negotiable currency when like if I go rob your bank, I'm not going to be like I want all US bills. That's what they have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's what they're going to grab. So I think maybe telephone game. What do you think then?
I don't know because it's so specific.
And it would have been written, right? Well,
Or it would have been told to
Tina.
Tina, who relayed it, that then was written by someone in the cockpit, unless, yeah, because Flo didn't take those initial demands.
No, she just took the Miss I Have a Bomb
Yeah.
note and pretty much copied that, I guess, word for word. So we at least semi know what that note says for
So it would have
sure.
been Tina relaying it to the cockpit, which would have been Harold Anderson or Flo at that point in time because
Mm-hmm.
she was in there
Mm-hmm.
and she was taking notes. But it's just that word negotiable.
It
I
would be that would be something nice to ask Tina. Like, did he say that to her, or is that what maybe she said, or what was told by someone in the cockpit? That would be a question to ask her.
because I don't know anyone in their life that's ever used the term negotiable currency.
No, I say dollars.
Yeah, and that's enough. Give me $200,000. By saying dollars, you're implying US currency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Unless the only other thing is if you're Canadian, because then you want, it's the difference between USD versus Canadian dollars. So that, I mean, it's an argument that he could be Canadian.
Yeah, but if you're committing this robbery in the United States, do you think there's a chance we're going to give you Canadian currency?
No, but if you're Canadian and you're used to traveling back and forth across the border, then you would probably, it would be just in your nature to specify.
Right, give me 200,000 loonies.
Right.
Although I've never really heard loonies used to describe more than a couple of dollars, but
Yeah. But I think you would be used to, if you lived across the border, you come down or you go back up, you'd have, you would specify USD versus Canadian dollars if you lived on the border, I guess, kind of close. I don't know. I'm not Canadian.
no, no,
Yeah.
it's just not happening. If you're in the United States and you say dollars, you're getting US
Dollars.
currency.
Yeah.
If I robbed a bank in Canada and I said I want $100,000, they're giving me Canadian currency. But if I'm in Mexico and I say I want $100,000, now they're like, is he talking about US currency and not pesos?
Maybe he was Mexican. But what if he were Native American and lived on the reservation? Would that have made a difference?
It's not like the reservation has their own currency they're using.
No, I mean they have their own, I guess their own system, like their own law, police department
But
and
they're
stuff.
still
But yeah,
using
they're still
dollars.
using USD. Yeah, that's true. And then I don't know. I think we've talked out every reasonable and unreasonable possibility.
Yeah, I wish I knew if that was what he said
Hmm.
or what ended up being reported or what was wrote down.
Yeah. Well, because remember when Chris Cunningham did the flight path presentation, remember he said that there was a discrepancy, at least when they were talking on the script of the flight path. So maybe it was a discrepancy that happened that, some things got changed later on.
Yeah, it's
I
just
don't
another
know.
thing that we're not going to know the answer to.
No, but does it? I don't know. Maybe it does matter. I was going to say,
The
does
only
it
reason it
matter? But
matters is if he said that. Because if it is a game of telephone kind of a thing, then it doesn't matter. Somebody just threw that in there.
yeah.
But if it was exactly what he said, then why did he say that? Why did he phrase it that way? Why did he think there would be a need to say that? Unless negotiable is a version of telephone of him saying he doesn't want hundreds, basically.
Right. Or would that also mean like he doesn't want new bills? Would that fall under that? Or is that something completely different?
I don't know the answer to that one because there is also like circulated is another
Mm-hmm.
word
Right.
that gets thrown around, circulated US
Mm-hmm.
currency. So I don't know. I would like to
No.
know like what is it he specifically said
Yeah.
because circulated is a lot different than negotiable.
Right. Was that a term
Negotiable
that
is
we just don't
weird.
use? Yeah, no. But was that a term that was used in 71? Like we said earlier, you don't talk about chivalry. You don't use that word term as much. Is did they use negotiable? Was that a vocabulary word that was used that often then?
I don't know. I would use it in like if you were like, "Hey, can I borrow your car this weekend and I'll do this?" I'd be like, "Well, that's negotiable."
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't refer to money
As
ever
that.
as negotiable.
Hmm. I don't know either. But I also don't know what other context it could be taken in
And also, it
besides
doesn't
that.
solve the case. If we found out
No,
tomorrow he did say negotiable, how much farther does that get me in the rest of the vortex? Nowhere. It doesn't matter.
nowhere. We still don't know if he's American or Canadian. Maybe he was well traveled.
I have drop zone south of Ariel, a
Yeah.
common theme in
Mm-hmm.
Marty's book, which again in 2016 is kind of a bold statement.
Yeah. And he
And in
was
2025, not as much, but
no.
here's in writing you saying it in 2016. So that looks pretty good.
Yeah, multiple times he did say that it was much further south. So I mean, he was right on so much. Like he really did so much work on this to make sure everything was as accurate as possible.
Yeah, and pre FBI files, it really is like you have to know what you can count on and what you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who got that right, I think it's really important.
Mm-hmm. Well,
These
just like the
they
six
stuck
thousand
by the things
dollars.
that ended up being true.
Yeah.
So their judgment is good.
Mm-hmm. I know. I would like him to write a follow-up book if he like if he's done anything else since.
I
I
would
would.
love for him to write a follow-up book. Marty's a great writer. He's
Yes.
obviously a very sharp guy. And because I know him, like I read this book almost exclusively in his voice
In
in my
his
head.
voice.
And he's got like this dry sense of humor, and all of his jokes come off like dry and flat. And same way in the book, it's like, oh, I love this. I love this. This is how Marty talks.
Yeah. No, I mean, I loved reading it. And he did talk about the prescription drugs, because this was when he was talking about the particles, the metallurgist kind of stuff, about the powder on the tie could have
Mhm.
been, because he did kind of relate that back to Gunther a little bit, where Dan LeClaire was having some heart problems and could be on heart medication. And that kind of medication happened to be in a powder that was also possibly on the tie. So that was kind of a really interesting, because even if it wasn't Dan LeClaire, maybe Cooper did have a heart problem.
Or the opposite is that powder on Benzedrine and
Mm,
Dexedrine,
that's true.
because it really seems like he offered that to the pilots to stay awake.
Hmm.
It'd be a weird detail to make that up.
Hmm.
And is that same anti-stick pill coating applied to that as well? Kind of seems like it would be.
Yeah, anything that you would have some kind of pill like that. Yeah,
So
that's
is
true.
it more likely that he's popping bennies all the time or that he's taking blood pressure medication?
Probably in this case, Benny's. Yeah. But I guess we don't know what else is on the tie. We just know basically the tie knot for really, like, really good. I know, but they've checked all the other stuffs. But like the most in depth look was the one on the tie knot. So I wonder what else is on the tie that could relate back to that.
Well, apparently everything. If you could name a rare metal, it's on the
It's on
test.
there. That's true. That's true. Let's see. Yeah, because he does think Leclerc is French. He talks about him being French Canadian. He does a lot with the Tina Bar money and the Washougal washdown. Uh, he does say that Tom's research is what proved that it couldn't have been in the dredging. The Tina
Right.
money caught it. Yeah. And I don't think I had remembered that or
Yeah,
thought
and the
about
like
that.
the Washougal washdown theory is introduced, and it's either like poo-pooed before it's introduced or immediately after it's introduced.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't get very far. But yeah, I mean, multiple times he talks about the new drop zone. So that's it, Shutter and the flight path. What
He
else
gives
do we
a
have?
shout out to Ross Richardson's Still Missing,
Mm-hmm,
as
mm-hmm.
well as Rackstraw's The Last Master Outlaw,
Yeah,
which that was one where I was like, when did this book come out? Because
yeah.
I
I
knew
don't have
like
that one.
Last Master Outlaw, I want to say is like late 15, early 16. It came out around the same time as the History Channel
Okay.
thing. So if Finding DB Cooper is 2016,
Mm-hmm.
did it come out at the end of 2016?
I don't know.
I don't know the answer to that either, but that was one where I'm like, how is that book in this book?
Well, I don't have the book. What does your
You've
book
never
say?
read The Last Master Outlaw?
No, that's one I haven't read. There's some that I kind of stay away
It's good, but
from.
I think it's mostly fiction.
Right. Like, I mean,
It's a it's a good, exciting read,
okay.
but I don't think any of it's true.
Oh,
If it were a fiction book, it would be a pretty
it would be
good
great.
book.
Okay.
As nonfiction, I don't like it.
I think sometimes I just get sour on certain things and I just don't want to participate anymore in it. So I don't get the books or read the books. I think that's why it took me so long to get Ha 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 because of the story behind it. And then finally I just caved. So I think that's why I haven't read that book because it's a Rackstraw book, right?
Ha ha ha. Or The
No,
Last
no.
Master Outlaw. Last
Last
Master
Master Out.
Outlaw is Rackstraw.
Yeah.
I think my biggest problem with it is there's this royal thing. I can't. Gosh, I wish I could pull out the name. Norman Van Winter. I
Mm-hmm.
did it. Amazing. But there's this section where he claims Rackstraw is this character, Norman Van Winter, who showed up in Astoria and swindled a bunch of people. My parents lived 5 miles from Astoria, literally like just across the bridge, if you know that area.
Mm-hmm.
And through my parents' church, I've actually talked to a couple people that were around that area during the time that went on. And the Norman Van Winter thing is very real, but it was not Rackstraw in any way, shape, or form. And that's the part of that bugs me so much. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, fine, Rackstraw's Cooper, whatever. He's 28 at the time, but Tina says he's 45.
Right.
Whatever. But here's this other thing, and you're gonna weave this in also. It's the
Yeah.
same way I feel about you're gonna come at me with your new DB Cooper suspect, and I'm interested, I'm listening. But then you're like, oh, and by the way, he also is the Zodiac killer and murdered John
Right.
Benet Ramsey and is the Atlanta child killer and killed Teresa Hallback and did this and did that. I'm like, okay, now I'm totally out. I don't want to be a
Mm-hmm.
part of
Mm-hmm.
the there's one mystery to solve them all thing. That
Yeah.
there's no
No,
there's
I
no
agree.
evidence of that. There's no truth to that. There's no rhyme and reason. There is no other story where there's one guy that did all these
Yeah.
crazy, unrelated, unsolved mysteries. It just doesn't even make sense.
Then maybe I'll have to read it just so I know what it says. I mean,
I
I don't
don't
have
think
it in
I've
the
ever
collection.
recommended anyone read Last Master Outlaw.
It's one that definitely is
It is a
not on the
good
top
book.
of.
There are better books about the case that are
Okay.
more poorly written or worse written. I don't know how to correctly phrase that. But Last Master Outlaw is a good book. It's
Hmm.
just not about DB Cooper.
Not.
It's fiction. It's fiction. If it's a
Okay.
fiction book, it's pretty good.
Okay. Okay. So if I do get it and I do read it, I'll just look at it in that light. Well, not like I would really think Rackshaw is Cooper anyway. I would be going into it that way anyway. So maybe if that's one on our list, I'll read it. Otherwise, I'll probably skip it.
I'm not putting that on the list. There's no way.
Okay, then it's fine. No, but he did. I mean, he has some of the 305 debriefs from each of the stewardesses. So
Yeah,
he's
the
got Flo, he's got
stewardesses,
Alice
Harold
Hancock.
Anderson and Radazak.
Yeah, it was really fun to read those again. And it's just enough. It's not too much to be overwhelming.
No, and it's quick, and I really appreciated he highlighted the parts that were important
Hmm.
so that if
Once
you
again,
didn't
like
want
he
to read
just,
all of it,
yeah, like I said, it's like this book's is like speaks to my soul. Like he just lays out what you need to know.
the only thing I wanted to bring up, and for some reason I didn't make a note of this, was the FOIA is courtesy of a guy on the forum known as Reichenbach, and I don't know who that is.
Oh,
So
I
those
don't.
interviews are from a FOIA from a forum user named Reichenbach,
Okay,
and I do not know that name.
I've never heard that name, but there's been a couple of the people in these books I haven't heard of, and you would know
See,
them
and
more.
everyone else, I was like, oh yeah, oh that guy, oh yeah, I know that person.
Yeah, and this is the one.
And
This
this
is
is
the
one
one
I'm
that
like,
stumped.
who?
Who would know? Could we get Chris on that?
Who would know? It would be an older school forum user. Because there was a thing on the Drop Zone and DB Cooper forum where like 50% of the users were completely anonymous, and it was
Mm.
just their screen name.
Oh wow.
Whereas like on the Facebook mystery group,
Yes.
if I post Nicole doesn't know anything about this case, she's completely
Hmm.
wrong, she's a fool, it has
Hmm.
my name and face directly attached to that comment.
Right.
There are people on Facebook with fake name.
Yeah.
It's quite the minority. But now even like on the drop zone on the DB Cooper forum, you know who
Hmm.
is behind the screen name. But 10, 15 years ago, that was not the case. It was
Mm-mm.
just the screen name. And there was a lot more secrecy,
Yeah.
which I kind of liked.
Well, the conversation was probably more open as well because there was no link to you.
I don't know, but also more hostile somehow.
Yeah. That's true. But yeah, no, I've never heard of that name, and especially if you haven't heard of it, then I don't know who they are.
Yeah, and I don't know who was doing FOIAs back then.
This was what year were the FOIAs what year was that they were released?
Well, I think the DB Cooper forum started in 12 or 13
Hmm.
when he realized, oh, the drop zone's going to get shut down because we behaved
Right.
badly. And
Hmm.
so the DB Cooper forum is going to be a curated group of serious people who want to seriously research this case. So from the start of it, there was like 8 names not allowed on the DB Cooper forum because we knew like these 8 are a problem.
Yeah.
So they're going to be excluded. And I think that's so interesting to get off on another tangent is that these DB Cooper groups are constantly splintering, constantly splintering. You had the drop zone, which was the only place for a long time. That gets suspended and shut down, and people get banned. So there's a new group only for the serious people, the DB Cooper Forum. That gets used for a while, but because there are some people not allowed on there, they're moving to other places. Then you had like There was a Discord that was set up for a while. The Reddit
Hmm.
went from being absolutely nothing to having quite a following pretty quickly. And then there was nothing on Facebook for the longest
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And then Eric created the DB Cooper Mystery Group. And I want to say like it hovered around a smaller number for a little while and then just blew up.
Hmm.
And then once that blows up, then it's like, okay, there's too many noobs in this group, and I don't like hearing what this person has to say, and so is ruining all this. So we're going to create a new group. And I love all of that. I love being allowed in every one of those groups when I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, this group doesn't like that group, and oh, this page is all full of people that don't want to be on the other one because so and so runs it or so and so's there. Which
No,
is why,
I'm.
like, before their Reddit page was big, I want to say, like, let's say there's 500 people on it.
Mhm.
I was posting, like, hey, here's my new episode on the Reddit. And they're like, hey, do you want to be one of the moderators for this group? And without thinking, I was just like, sure. Oh, no, the reason it came up is I posted my new episode
Mhm.
and it was like automatically rejected by some sort of like, oh, we don't allow this, and if any post contains this, it's automatically kicked out.
Uh-huh.
And then so I messaged the person moderating it at the time and I was like, hey, my post just got deleted before it ever went live. What the hell's up with this? And he's like, oh, I fixed it. Do you just want to be a moderator so you don't have to worry about this kind of stuff? And then I was like, yeah, you know what? I would do that. And so I was a moderator on the Reddit for like 5 hours. And in that 5 hours, I was like, actually, me being a moderator is kind of a conflict of interest because if Nicole goes on there and was like, Darren's show sucks and he's the worst and he doesn't know anything. And then if I make any sort of moderation on that or any comment or whatever, now I'm completely compromised. So I was like,
Yeah.
I just on my own volition, being a moderator for 5 hours, I was like, hey, I just gotta let you know I can't do this. I'm
Yeah.
not interested in doing this, and this is a conflict of interest, so I've completely removed myself from this. I just
Oh my
like I
gosh.
imagine some guy I've never met like this guy's a psycho.
Do you know the moderators personally on all of them?
It was a different one when it was small. Um, and I've talked to that guy through email, but never on phone or in person. And then somebody else very well known is now a moderator, potentially the main one on that Reddit.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the Facebook group is moderated by you and Nikki and Eric,
and
right?
and Chris Brower.
And Chris Brower. Okay.
Yeah, I forgot about. But and then the official DB Cooper group has their own as well. I guess it's Chris and Cunningham and Ryan maybe on that one as for moderator for those book. I don't know.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but yeah, we are on the. There's four of us on the DB Cooper mystery group.
And how do you like moderating?
I mean, I think it's fine. I usually, if it's something big, we'll talk about it. But typically, it gets handled before I even see it. So,
That's the
I
way to do
mean,
it.
yeah, I mean, by the time I've seen it, someone else has handled whatever's going on. So I don't. There's not a whole lot of chat. So I mean, it's fine. It's
Until somebody's like, Nicole took my post down because she's compromised and corrupt, and she only wants this case to remain unsolved because this is how she makes all of her money.
exactly right. We don't want to solve the case. Yeah, no, I mean, but usually by the time it never gets to me. It's always been handled by someone else. So I don't really have to handle too many things.
All right, I'll watch my P's and Q's around you so I can stay in the group.
I'm not getting rid of anyone. No. That's not that's not my choice. Unless you start really going on and saying that it's Rackstraw and McCoy, then we might have to talk.
You know, when all the Grider stuff came out, I was honestly kind of proud of the Vortex in the way they handled new people.
Mm-hmm.
I especially saw it on Reddit quite a bit because I wasn't as active looking at the Facebook at that time, but just to see like every single day a bunch of people like, so this McCoy thing, the case is solved, right? And instead of the Vortex being like, go F yourself, kick
Mm-hmm.
rocks, you don't know this. It's like, well, actually, if you look into the case a lot, and here's all this evidence against McCoy, and here's where the investigation went. I was really proud of the way that was handled
Oh,
because
yeah.
these are people that 99% of them are not going to stay in the vortex, don't
Yeah.
care about this case, saw one news story and was like, I wonder what they're saying on Reddit about that or Facebook. And then they're going to say one thing and like, did you guys read the article today? Obviously, it's McCoy. Can you believe
Yeah.
this? I can't believe I'm the one to break the news to you guys.
Right.
But it just over and over was handled so well. There was even a post on the Reddit group about like, hey, there's a bunch of people showing up right now,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all the Grider new McCoy thing. And here's some information if you're coming here for this. And if you've been in the group a while, here's sort of how to handle it. And I was like, that's a really smart thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Because if
that
I
really
just
is.
came here from reading a McCoy article, oh, well, I guess I should look at this post first.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And think Kevin's Ryan has all his videos now. So you can just kind of be like, hey, this video is really useful. Start with this one and, then go from there. So that I think I saw that kind of posted a couple of times too. Like,
Oh yeah, some of his videos are so valuable. As much as I want to clown on him for reaction videos, his like Grider parachute video or
oh, yeah.
his video about the parachutes or he's going to do a video on why Cooper survived the jump. Like
Mm-hmm.
those brief short videos that you can just send to someone is
Yeah.
so great
Yeah. They're
because
invaluable.
yeah, my show is for the people that are into this. And if you talk to your coworker about did Cooper survive the jump, are you going to send them Ryan's 6 minute DB Cooper video? Or, hey, here's this obscure podcast that's 2.5 hours where Darren talks to Martin Andrade.
Yeah.
Listen to this and then you'll really know what's up. No, it has to
Oh,
be
yeah.
the right person for you to be like, here's a 2.5 hour podcast about obscure parachute details. And
Yeah.
that's the difference between someone who's in the vortex and not.
Yeah. So it just makes it easy. I was talking to Ryan earlier this week because, like we were saying earlier, we're reading all these books. I'm getting stuff all confused in my head of what's right and what's not. And so I told him, I was like, listen, on my way to and from work, your podcast are just on constant repeat. So I can at least try to keep my facts straight because they're so useful, especially when you're reading, some of the, well, not Marty's book, but some of the other books where you're like, really? Was that real? Did that happen? Did that not happen? Like, yeah, I love his videos and his podcast as well. It's kind of be like, okay, let's try not to screw up too many of these facts this time.
Yeah. Yeah, it gets real muddy real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I'm on my second notebook now, but it's too hard to keep track just reading a bunch at a time.
Well,
And even now
we
I'm
can't
kind of
even
like, wait,
stay on track on the show.
I
We haven't
know.
even finished Marty's review. Okay.
No, and it's so good. Okay, what are we going to go to next? What are we going to talk about?
I got all my
You,
notes covered on Marty's book.
okay, let's see. I just really enjoy all of his parachute talk because he even says that he brings up Rod Hetty and how it was his first night jump. And I don't know if this is true or not, at 300 miles per hour. And it was his first jet jump and he survived. So, I mean, it just goes on to say, pretty much Cooper didn't die from a parachute jump. He may have died other ways, but not from a parachute jump.
I think, yeah, that's the point of Marty's book. He survived the jump.
Yeah.
Like,
which is,
there is definitely a Marty's very interested in the Gunther angle.
he doesn't push it.
No, even he's a very skeptical guy. So even still, he's like, it's a lot of weird coincidences.
Yeah.
And these are all the notes. He has that one chapter where he pulls random sections of Gunther's book and compares it to what we know about the Cooper case or what we're theorizing about that. And that's a really interesting way to do that.
Yeah.
Because if you read the Gunther book, which we just did.
Yes.
Or if you just read that chapter in Marty's book, he just pulls the interesting stuff from the book. And I'm not meaning that in like he's cherry picking.
No.
He's like, these were the things that I found really interesting, and this is how it compares to that.
Yes.
I mean, there's a couple where he points out like, this is obviously not true. Like this is obviously made up. So he
has a whole section on where Gunther doesn't match the 302s or the actual facts, kind of like, I mean, he lays all that out.
Yeah, and he explains like Gunther was investigating this himself, so you have to think about what is it that Gunther investigated where he filled in those details versus what Clara told him.
Or he talked to Himmelsbach as well.
Yeah.
Did he talk to Kasi? No.
I don't think he did.
No. Because Kasi was always telling different things. But no, I mean, I loved how he laid
what
all
year
of
did
that
Kasi die? 2012?
Ooh, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, he goes through basically all of the main books.
Kasi died in 2013.
Okay.
I was so close. So close.
Way better than what I would have come up with. I would know maybe within the last 10 years, and I would have even been wrong with that. No, but I really enjoyed this book.
Is it a must read?
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, I've told people like there are 3 books that you should use to introduce yourself to the case.
Yeah.
It should be Skyjack, Finding DB Cooper, and Bruce Smith's DB Cooper and the FBI.
Yeah.
Because if Skyjack is the perfect introduction to the case, and it's a fantastic book, and it's a fun adventure, so hopefully that gets you sucked into the vortex like it did me. And then Marty's book is Did He or Did He Not Survive in the Jump? And I can't imagine you actually reading this book, putting it down and saying, I think he died in the jump. Because if you read this, you can't disagree with what the work Marty puts out there.
No, he's got everything. He's got annotation. He's proven it.
And then Bruce Smith is like, if you know the case, here's a broad overview of everything. The parachutes, the money, the suspects, the books, the adventure. Bruce has a chapter on everything.
Everything. Yes. How long did it take Bruce to write that book?
I don't know the answer to that. A few years. I think he met the Foremans in like 2014.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
At a car show.
Yeah, which is awesome. That Barb was the one that pulled him in. No, I mean, I think it's a must read. And I think it's definitely a must read for Dead Camp.
Yeah.
I mean,
the only reason you read Dead Camp is because you haven't read Marty's book.
Absolutely. Like, I think we wouldn't have Dead Camp if they actually read the book. And I mean, that would be one thing we could probably put to rest. Maybe. I don't know. Some people I think are just going to be dead camp for life.
Yeah, they can hang out with the he never jumped and he never existed crowd.
Mm-mm.
They can all hang out together. They can have
Yeah.
their own CooperCon celebration, and we'll have the real one.
We'll have the real one. We'll have the DB Cooper DB Cooper conference. That's what we'll have. But yeah, must read. Loved it.
All right, how about on your parachute scale?
Can we have 5 parachutes? Is that
No, we only
cheating?
have 4.
Okay, 4. 4.
I'm giving it 4 parachutes as well. It is, I've done it a million times. Like, it's one of the 3 books where I'm like, you have to read this one.
Yeah.
You have to read it. Because it's tough sometimes to recommend a suspect book
Mm-hmm.
to someone that's not in the case. If
Right.
you're already in the case, I'm like, bro, you got to check out Paratrooper of Fortune.
Mm-hmm.
Or, dude, where was Skip? This new book, it's so good. You got to check
Yes.
it out. But usually I'm recommending a book that is not subject focused.
Yeah.
So I mean, I want to take full credit. Marty, I hope you're listening to this. Every book you've sold after the release of my show, half that credit is mine exclusively. Who else is out there promoting your book, Marty?
Yeah. I mean, that is true. But yeah, I mean, I forgot how much it's an easy read. Like I said, I love the way it's laid out and the way he wrote it. It's definitely
It's a
5
book
full
for the
parachutes.
vortex.
It is. It is. Yeah, I do. I love it.
From
I
a
love
guy
it.
that's in the vortex.
Yeah. Who isn't trying to push anything? It's just like, here's the facts. This is what I've come up with.
And one of the things I love about Marty so much is like, I could call him right now and be like, hey, I just reread your book and this one part is complete bullshit and it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
And he would listen and be like, oh, well, I understand why you think that way. Whereas I know a lot of people where I could call and be like, this part of your book, it's wrong and it sucks. And instantly they're like on the defensive and you don't know what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about. But Marty's a very pragmatic, skeptical, intelligent guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it just comes across in his writing.
Yeah, it's very good. And now it really does, because I think he's working on Clara and Barb. Is he still working on that?
I hope so. Where the hell is your follow-up, Marty?
Yeah, because
Finding DB Cooper Part 2.
yeah, it's Clara Barb. Is Barb Clara. Because of the research that he put into this. Now, I mean, I would love to see his research put into that. That would be good. Part 2. Whether
The
he can prove
10-year
it or not.
anniversary of the book is coming up. Marty, we expect a follow-up.
Yeah, he should be writing it now so it can make it in time.
Did I tell you Marty posted about our show on Twitter?
No, I don't have Twitter.
So I released the episode, I posted it on Twitter, and he like reposted it and was like, I cannot get enough of this. This is fantastic. And I responded and I was like, well, will you be as excited when we review your book?
Right.
And his response was, after listening to your review of Blevins' book, I'm not so sure I want you to review my book.
we were a little harsh. I've been trying not to be as harsh.
These are released for public consumption. So
Yeah.
whatever our opinion on this isn't a private conversation I had with Marty.
Right.
This is the book he released that I read.
Yeah.
So we're absolutely free to talk about that. We've pointed out bad things in every
Yeah.
single one of these books, mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
changes in perspective even we were critical on.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of good things to say about.
Yeah. I don't think we
every
had
single-
anything bad to say about Marty's book.
Well, now we got to say something bad about it.
It doesn't have part 2.
It doesn't have part 2. I'm looking at my notes again. Negotiable currency. I mean, I have complaints about that, but that's not on Marty. That's more on we just don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I have anything.
I have a quote from him on page 27. Tina Barr is indecipherable, which I just loved that phrasing. Indecipherable.
Um,
Oh, I have a note. Page 88. I'm
huh.
sure this case will be solved in the next few years.
There we go.
There we go. Marty,
That's the one
what the hell,
thing.
man?
There we go. That's now we can say he still gets 4 parachutes.
So now I gotta ask a 2016 Marty why he thought this would
It
be
would be
solved in the
solved.
next few years.
Right? What would have gotten us there? Maybe the release of more of the 302s? I
Or
don't know.
some magical technology.
Yeah. A time machine, something at that point. But yeah, no, it was great. I really enjoyed rereading it. I forgot how good it was.
And
I,
four
I think
parachutes.
it's for yes. I
Four
mean,
parachutes.
if we could do 5 parachutes, it would get 5, but definitely 4 parachutes. So what's next?
What's next? Let's do Ha Ha Ha.
Okay.
Because I have never read that cover to
Me
cover.
either. Me either.
But what are we gonna do with Ha Ha Ha?
Do you want to do a suspect book? Or because at that point we have Paratrooper of Fortune, we have Rollins' book, we have the Foreman's book.
Do you have The Man in 18E?
I do have it.
Do you want to do that one? I've never read that
Sure.
one either.
Neither have I. I bought it at CooperCon. Not this past one, but the first CooperCon we went to. Yeah, we can do those.
So then we're gonna read 2 fiction books.
We are. Are we ready for that?
Ha 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 and The Man in 18E. The Man
Yeah.
in 18E, I think it is like a sort of time traveler Cooper,
Oh,
from
okay.
what I've heard. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll totally do that. Yeah, I have not read that one.
Okay, let me write this down before I start reading one book and then forget what the next one is.
I don't know which one I want to read first.
All right, let's agree to read the same one first this time, because for
Okay.
whatever reason, we've chosen a different one to read first
Yes.
every time.
Yeah, we've been opposite every time. So what do you want to read first?
Let's do Ha 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 first, because I think
Okay.
that will be more of a chore.
Mm-hmm. Flipping through it, I agree. Yeah, let's do it and see what it gets us.
And The Man in
The other
18E was by Lynn, that used to post on the DB
Oh,
Cooper forum a lot.
oh, cool.
I haven't seen much from her in quite a while, but it would be from someone that knows the case. Even though it's a
Yeah,
fictional book, it's not like she watched Unsolved Mysteries and was like, "Oh, I'd
yeah,
write a book about that guy." It
yeah.
was more she was into it and then wrote a book about it.
Cool. Yeah. No, I'm down. I'm excited for those. Well, totally. But yeah, so we'll start with ha ha ha.
Ha 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 18E.
Yeah. I mean, ha 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 is not that big. It's just where it's so small. That's why it's got so many pages. Cool.
Yeah, and I've glanced at Ha 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 a few times and I think it's a lot of filler.
I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, because there's only a little part about the actual skyjacking, right?
Yeah, I think it's sort of along the lines of The Pursuit of DB Cooper, where the DB Cooper content takes place in the first few seconds, and then the rest of it's made up.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be my first time reading both.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
it's on.
Yeah.
I'll see you next time for Ha 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 and The Man in 18E.
And an 18. I'm excited. Sounds
I'm
like a plan.
excited too, and I really do want to say thank you for doing this with me, because
My pleasure.
I'm not babysitting you at all. It's more like,
No.
Nicole, I didn't read the books yet. Give me a break. Please be patient with me. And my biggest concern with doing something like this was I have to count on somebody else to be doing this with me. Because my worst nightmare would be we're talking about Norjack, and I can tell right away that you read the first chapter and the last chapter and nothing else.
And that was it. Yeah.
Well, I
No,
guess
I don't
even
want
worse
to
than that, when my nightmare would be I'm pretending that I
that
read
you read
Marty's
it.
book.
Yeah.
And now you're like, do you remember on page 44 when he said this? I'm like, oh, yeah, of course I remember that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't want to let you down. I will be here. I will
With
read.
Max Gunther,
Mm-hmm.
I cut that one a little close and I was like, I've read that book before. And then when I actually picked it up, I was like, I have to read all of this.
Yeah.
Because I really don't have the recollection of this book that I thought I did.
No, me either. I had forgotten so much about it
Because I
that
thought, I could skip a paragraph here or there, but it's like, oh,
no.
I didn't remember most of this.
Yeah, no. And that's, I mean, I think too, after doing the first two, making my notes, I realized it was just a jumbled mess and my notes meant nothing to me by the time we got to talking. So that's why I was like, I'm doing color coded, I'm doing page numbers.
Page numbers is a really good idea. Because
Yeah.
then as a listener, if I'm like, oh yeah, Marty talked all about the green bag on page 70. Then
Mm-hmm.
as a listener, if you happen to have the book, you could go to page 70 and be like, oh,
Yeah.
here's what Darren and Nicole were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
page number is a good idea. By the end of this series, we're really going to nail it.
right. I think
It'll be
each time,
perfect by the last minute of the last episode.
right? Yeah, I think each time it's just gonna get better and better. I'm learning. I just want to do good for the vortex. I don't want to let anyone down.
Well, you haven't let me down so far,
Okay,
Nicole.
good.
I think you're killing it.
Thanks. You are too.
All right. Well, unless I haven't asked you this. Is there anything that you want to promote doing this show?
No. No.
You don't want to promote your sister-in-law's quilting shop or your
No.
cousin's plumbing supply store?
No, nothing. Nothing. I
They
am
can go
just
right to hell.
here. Yeah, no. I am just here. I'm just here. You pulled me out of my little corner that I live in to do this. So I'm fully enjoying just this.
All right. Well, let's go read some more DB
Yeah.
Cooper books, Nicole.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right. Thanks again for joining me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. My pleasure.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
You can find Nicole on the DB Cooper Mystery Group on Facebook or catch her here for the next episode of our book review series. Do you have family secrets that may help solve the case? Questions, comments, hit us up. You can find us on Instagram or Twitter, or you can email us directly, dbcooperpodcast@gmail.com. Links to all that in the show notes. Thank you to Nicole Legg for reading along with me. Thank you to Russell Colbert, who was partying at Disney World while I was sitting alone reading books. Thank you to Darren Osadich for playing us out. I'm Darren Schaefer, and thank you for listening to the Cooper Vortex.
Here's a story we all know about a man many years ago. Hijacked a plane, so we were told. Then he jumped into the cold. Lights are burning and a cigarette. He's in the air, the stage is set. Polite and kind, the people say it's time to make his getaway. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. Rolled up in his coat-built tie. He's got enough to change his life. Where he landed, no one knows. But from his tale, a legend grows. Was a cold, dark, rainy night. As he walked, he saw light. Held his cash close to his side. He just needs to catch a ride. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. to the bone. Looked for a place to use the phone. Little cafe outside of town. He walked in, he just sat down. Met a man with a cowboy hat who told a friend right where he's at. Into the night he disappeared, and from that night a legend reared. This is how the story goes about the money and the man. D.B. Cooper, they call me now. Catch me if you can. 40 years, the secret's out. The story has been told. D.B. Cooper's done running now. He was 80